Chapter 698. On the other side, just as Feng Zichin was monitoring the Kunlun mountain, on the South Pole star, the South Pole Longevity Emperor also opened his eyes and quietly lowered his gaze, looking in the direction of Mount Meru to monitor the movements of Zhuan-Ti and Zhuan-Ti. The two of them each monitored one side, waiting for them to make a big move and destroy it immediately. However, before Feng Zichin and the other 5 saints made a big move, as if they were deliberately going against him, something happened on the human side. Feng Zichin, who had originally planned not to interfere in the affairs of the human race, had no choice but to continue looking at the human race. Good fellow. In less than 100 years, my Empress Taikong was chased off the throne, lost her throne, and wandered outside. Looking at the person who chased Taikong off the throne, Feng Zichin was speechless. Good fellow, it was also an acquaintance. It was Yi, the former great sorcerer, Yi of the Witch Clan, who was also the current Hui. Back then, the great sorcerer Yi was schemed against by Shihi. On the day of Feng Zichin's wedding, he went to the human race and wanted to snatch his new wife, the divine Empress Chang, Yi of the human race. For this, Feng Zichin was furious. He used the human Dao imperial court to suppress Yi, who had lost control. Not long after, he sent him into the cycle of reincarnation in an attempt to solve the hidden dangers in Yi's body and restore him to normal. After that, he did not return for a long time. Feng Zichin gradually forgot about him, but he did not expect that today, more than 10 million years later, he would see the great sorcerer Yi again. No, to be precise, it was the reincarnation of the great sorcerer Yi, Yi of the human race. That's right, after more than 10 million years, that Yi reincarnated into the human race and became the leader of the Cheong tribe of the eastern barbarians of the human race. Not long ago, he was also the one who chased Empress Taikong off the throne. Tisk, there's going to be a lot of fun. With a thought, Feng Zichin understood the whole story. It was nothing more than that after Empress Taikong succeeded the throne, he was greedy for pleasure and ignored political affairs, causing the people to be resentful. After that, this fellow did not repent and brought a large group of his subordinates out to hunt. Are you messing around? Then his house was stolen. Taking advantage of Taikang's absence, Yi led his troops to take over the capital of the Xia dynasty. When Taikong received the news and wanted to take back the capital, he realized that he was no match for Yi. That's right. How could a person who was so greedy for pleasure be a match for Yi, who fought all year round? Thus, Yi replaced Taikong and became the new king of the Xia dynasty. At this time, there was no such thing as a change of dynasty. Therefore, even if Yi banished Taikong, he still called himself Empress Xia instead of establishing a new dynasty. In this way, the human race ushered in the reign of Yi. It made sense. Although Yi was born in the Wu tribe, he had contributed to shooting down the sun. After careful calculation, all the creatures in the untainted land had received his favor. Therefore, it was suitable for him to lead the human race, even if it was to repay the karma of the past. However, there was a huge karma between Yi and Feng Zichin. It seems that Yi has not awakened the memories of his previous life. Otherwise, with his personality, he would not have taken a fancy to the identity of the monarch of the Xia dynasty. From Yi's current actions, Feng Zichin had analyzed a lot of things. First of all, he was sure that Yi had not awakened the memories of his previous life. Otherwise, he would have run back to the Wu tribe long ago. He would not be like now, eagerly staying in the human race to compete with Taikong for the position of the human king. Why is Taikong so useless? He is the descendant of Shen Yuan, the eldest grandson of Yu the Great, and the eldest son of Qi. How could he be so easily taken away by others? Even if he inherited a trace of the advantages of his ancestors, it shouldn't be like this. It's enough that the flying dragon can lose. On the Emperor's star, Feng Zichin complained. Until now, he still could not understand how Tai Kong had become like this. One had to know that at this time, it had not been long since the fall of Yu the Great and Xia Qi, and the world was still thinking about their merits. With the foundation they had left behind, as long as Tai Kong worked a little harder, he would not end up being ousted from the throne. He did not want to make progress and was greedy for pleasure, Sai, the ruler of a fallen country. Feng Zichen was in a very bad mood, so much so that he kept complaining to Tai Kong. This was not because he was dissatisfied with Tai Kong, but because of the lunar star. Just now, he suddenly felt a strange fluctuation coming from the lunar star. Obviously, Wang Shu could not help but attack him after knowing that Hou Yi had reappeared. Back then, Hou Yi had offended Wang Shu when she was still Chang Yi. The divine empress of the human race, Chang Yi, had been virtuous and virtuous all her life. She could be said to be the divine emperor's good wife. It could be said that she was full of merits. However, no one was perfect. Even someone as virtuous as the divine empress had something to criticize. On the day of the wedding, a man from another race came to snatch the bride. Although this had nothing to do with Chang Yi and was all Hou Yi's personal behavior, it would not be good if word of this spread out. Who asked Hou Yi and Chang Yi to be unlucky and be schemed against by Shi He and Di Jun? This matter became the only stain on Chang Yi's perfect resume. It was also because of this that the grudge between Wang Shu and Hou Yi was formed. Not only did he not get any benefits from saving people, but he also ended up in trouble and saved himself a big problem. It would be strange if Wang Shu was not angry. As for Hou Yi, it was because he was schemed against by Shi He that he did such an unwise thing. Regarding this, Wang Shu had always sneered. Just by saying that he was schemed against, he wanted to expose the matter of destroying his reputation. How could there be such a good thing in the world? Wang Shu would not forget the karma between him and Shi He. But similarly, he would not forget the karma between him and Hou Yi. Hou Yi would eventually pay the price for his actions that day. Back then, when Hou Yi was suppressed by Feng Zichen, Wang Shu had not recovered his memory and was relatively weak. Even if Hou Yi was in front of him, he was unable to take revenge. But now he was already one of the few top-notch, great, divine abilities in the primordial world. Wouldn't it be easy for him to deal with a Hou Yi who had not recovered his strength? So, after sensing Hou Yi's aura, Wang Shu directly made a move, wanting to give Hou Yi retribution and end the karma from back then. And regarding all of this, Feng Zichen naturally stood on his wife's side. Hou Yi, you asked for this. Don't blame me for being ruthless. Feng Zichen's heart moved slightly. It was obvious that he had a plan. He was prepared to find an opportunity to kick Hou Yi off the stage and send him back into the cycle of reincarnation. Look at what Hou Yi was like now. He was greedy for pleasure and did not want to improve. He was exactly the same as Tai Kong from before. If this continued, he would be crippled. He might not even be able to withstand the backlash of the dragon energy of the people path, not to mention recovering his strength and awakening the memories of his previous life. Therefore, this account could be considered useless. It was better to send it back into the cycle of reincarnation and rebuild it. Yes, this excuse was very good. In the future, if the Lady of Earth asked, he would use this to brush her off. Feng Zichen was doing this for Hou Yi's own good. Being killed by Wang Shu was better than being killed by the backlash of his people path dragon energy. At the very least, if he died to the former, nothing would happen to Hou Yi's true spirit. He still had a chance to be reincarnated. However, if he died to the latter, his true spirit would be destroyed. If Hou Yi wanted to be resurrected, it would really become a troublesome matter. It was also Hou Yi's own failure that gave others a chance to make a move. Otherwise, if he was a wise ruler and made the great Xia dynasty prosper, who would dare to touch him? The human emperor's dignity would not be lost. He was almost invincible in the primordial world. In the long river of destiny, as the moon star trembled, the destiny of the human race also underwent an inexplicable change. Wisps of destiny separated, giving birth to one person after another with great destiny. As the Saint Empress of the human race, the deity position stood in the ancestral temple of the human race and enjoyed the worship of the human race for generations. Wang Shu naturally had the ability to mobilize the destiny of the human race. Although this bit of destiny was not much, it was enough to have a certain impact on the human race. At the same time, Feng Zichen secretly mobilized the Ziwei star and planted wisps of Emperor's aura on those with great destiny, making them the powerful successors of the human king to compete with Hou-Yi for the throne. For a moment, the human race fell into war again. When the Great Era descended, destiny would definitely fluctuate because of it, and countless opportunities would be born. Therefore, every time the Great Era descended, although countless living beings would die tragically, there would also be many heroes who would take the opportunity to rise and create their own glory. After this time, the human race might produce many experts. Of course, this did not mean that Feng Zichen was ruthless. In order to let the human race produce more experts, he did not care about the lives of those innocent people. In fact, that was not the case. Although there were many ordinary mortals in the human race, the main body was still made up of cultivators. This meant that the civil war of the human race involved cultivators and not ordinary people. In addition, with the protection of the 9-province barrier, ordinary mortals would not be affected by the war between cultivators. This civil war of the human race completely revolved around cultivators. It might affect the lives of ordinary people, but it would not cause any serious consequences. Therefore, mortals could be more or less worry-free. As for the casualties of cultivators, this could only be said that since they had chosen to embark on this path of no return, they had to be prepared to pay with their lives at any time. The path of cultivation was against the heavens to begin with. It was normal for it to be full of ups and downs. It was impossible to have a smooth journey all the way. Just like writing a novel, it was normal to die halfway. Moreover, for the sake of the human race's strength, some sacrifices were inevitable. When the heavens emit killing intent, the stars shift. When the earth emits killing intent, dragons and snakes rise. When humans emit killing intent, heaven and earth turn upside down. When heaven and man unite, all changes are fixed. On the untainted land, as Feng Zichen and Wang Shu killed each other with a single thought, a magnificent upheaval began. Hou-Yi had been in power for less than 1,000 years before he was killed by his subordinate, Han Li, and became a stepping stone for him to become Empress Xia. After that, Xia Qi's descendants rose and wanted to recreate the glory of their ancestors to fight for the throne with Han Li. At this time, when the other powerful tribes saw this, they also had thoughts. They felt that if Hou-Yi could be king and Han Li could be king, why couldn't they? In this world, Xia Qi could take it, Hou-Yi could take it, and Han Li could take it. Naturally, they could take it too. Therefore, the leaders of the various tribes who had such thoughts joined the battle for the throne. This was, if Tai Kong lost his position, the world would despise him. In less than 1,000 years, the human race was in chaos. It could be said that heroes rose and ruled the world together, until 10,000 years later, Yu the Great's descendant, Yu Shaokong, rose strongly. He first killed Han Li, then swept away the heroes, re-established the world, and revived the Great Xia. At this point, the supreme power of the Great Xia returned to the hands of Yu the Great's descendants after a few changes. It was also from then on that the human race regained peace and entered the stage of recuperation. It was a pity that due to the increasingly harsh environment of heaven and earth, although many Tai Jinxian were born, none of the Daluo Jinxian was born. Now, the most likely person to become the Daluo Jinxian in the human race was the human king, Yu Shaokong. Note, after Yu the Great, there were no more human sovereigns. They were all called the human kings. As long as he could sit on the human king's position for 10,000 years, he would definitely become the Daluo Jinxian. If he could sit on the human king's position for 1,000,000 years like the 3 sovereigns and 5 emperors, then not only would he become a great divine power in the future, he would also have a chance of becoming the primordial Daluo Jinxian. However, all of this had nothing to do with Feng Zichen. It all depended on Yu Shaokong's own hard work. And now, Feng Zichen. There were more important things to do. There was movement from the 3 Pure Ones. Kunlun Mountain, which had been peaceful for a long time, suddenly stirred up a boundless storm. Beams of resplendent immortal light rose from the Jade Void Palace of Kunlun Mountain and spread towards the entire primordial world. The immortal light was unusually clear and pure, as if it contained the principles of heaven and earth. It gently streaked across the world, releasing a speechless mystery. In an instant, the world seemed to be different. It was as if it had been separated by an inexplicable force, creating a barrier. This is Feng Zichen carefully sensed for a moment and finally realized that the world was different from before. After the immortal light streaked across, what changed was not the world, but the connate qi and postnatal qi that filled the world. Under the attack of the 3 Pure Ones, the qi that filled the primordial world seemed to have been cut in the middle, and there was a distinction between clear and turbid. In the past, although the world was divided into 2, there was no qi of heaven. This did not mean that the primordial world did not have connate clear qi and connate turbid qi. Instead, what occupied the main stream of the primordial world was the purest connate qi that the world had spontaneously transformed from the chaos qi. This kind of connate qi was directly transformed from the chaos qi, so it did not have any attributes. It could also be said that it contained all attributes, including clear and turbid, yin and yang, 5 elements, and so on. Therefore, after this kind of connate qi was absorbed by a cultivator, it could be transformed into connate power of any attribute. The postnatal qi that was directly transformed from connate qi had the same characteristics as it. But now, as the qi of heaven had a distinction between clear and turbid, this characteristic was no longer there. Half of it was missing. How could it be as perfect as before? Good. The 3 Pure Ones are really generous. After coming back to his senses, Feng Zichen clicked his tongue and said he had roughly guessed the 3 Pure Ones' plan. After the distinction between clear and turbid qi of heaven, the 3 Pure Ones would undoubtedly benefit the most. As the connate holiness that was born from the fusion of the fragments of Panga's primordial spirit and the connate clear and turbid qi of heaven, the 3 Pure Ones could be said to be the ancestors of the connate light qi. Therefore, in the future, if someone cultivated the connate light qi, he would definitely be classified as a disciple of the 3 Pure Ones. Think about it, if all the cultivators in the future were to be disciples of the 3 Pure Ones, how much would their fate expand? It would not be an exaggeration to say that they would be the top 3 in the primordial world. However, there was another loophole. That was, there were countless cultivators in the primordial world. How could the 3 Pure Ones make these cultivators willingly give up using the connate qi to cultivate and use the light qi that was not as good as the connate qi? However, since the 3 Pure Ones dared to divide the connate qi, they must have a perfect plan that could make this happen. According to Feng Zichen's speculation, the 3 Pure Ones should create a cultivation system that relied on the connate light qi to replace the existing cultivation system. Moreover, this new cultivation system would definitely be better than the previous one. Otherwise, who would be willing to change the cultivation system for no reason? Just as Feng Zichen was thinking about this, the 3 Pure Ones made another move on the Kunlun Mountain. Mysterious runes rose from the Kunlun Mountain and formed a supreme Taoist scripture in the sky. The mysterious wave spread out, almost alarming all the living beings in the primordial world. They subconsciously looked in the direction of the Taoist scripture. Then, before the people could see clearly what kind of mystery was recorded in the supreme Taoist scripture. They heard a boom. The supreme Taoist scripture suddenly exploded and turned into countless light spots that scattered all over the primordial world. Swish, the next moment, a cultivation method called the Celestial Immortal Path appeared in the minds of all living beings. The Celestial Immortal Path was a cultivation method that was different from the traditional Immortal Path. It was jointly created by the Taoist priests of the Three Pure Ones. The times were changing, the rules were changing, and so was the Great Tao. The Taoist priests of the Three Pure Ones went with the flow and redefined the Immortal Path, creating the Celestial Immortal Path. Unlike the traditional Immortal Path that collected the Khanate Qi, the Celestial Immortal Path needed to collect the Khanate Light Qi, which was the so-called spiritual Qi. In other words, the Celestial Immortal Path relied on spiritual Qi. Obviously, this was the Three Pure Ones method to make all living beings use spiritual Qi. Compared to the traditional Immortal Path, the Celestial Immortal Path was undoubtedly simpler. It was easier to cultivate and break through. There was no doubt about this, because the cultivation of the Celestial Immortal Path mainly focused on refining the primordial spirit and neglected the cultivation of the body. In other words, the reason why the Celestial Immortal Path could be cultivated so quickly was that it gave up refining the body. To cultivate the traditional Immortal Path, one had to refine the body while strengthening the primordial spirit. This would undoubtedly slow down one's cultivation speed. However, the Celestial Immortal Path had almost completely given up on refining the body. Wouldn't this greatly increase the efficiency of cultivation? It would be strange if one didn't advance quickly. Focusing on the primordial spirit was the Celestial Immortal Path's greatest characteristic. At the same time, this was especially in line with the Three Pure Ones situation. Everyone knew that because the Three Pure Ones were formed from Panga's primordial spirit, their primordial spirits were innately powerful, second only to the Tao ancestors and demon ancestors. Just as the shamans were known for their physical bodies, the Three Pure Ones were known for their primordial spirit. But at the same time, there was nothing perfect in the world. Shamans had powerful bodies, but they didn't have a primordial spirit to match them. Due to their excessively powerful primordial spirits, the Three Pure Ones' primordial spirits were incomparably weak. Of course, this weakness was the result of comparing their bodies to the other Khanate demon gods, not Khanate life forms. To Khanate life forms, the Three Pure Ones' primordial spirits were unreachable, no matter how weak they were. The Three Pure Ones' primordial spirits were their flaw, just like how shamans were born without a primordial spirit. Since they couldn't strengthen their bodies, they could only play to their strengths and focus on strengthening their primordial spirits. For this reason, it was only natural that the Three Pure Ones who were skilled in the primordial spirit Tao would create the Celestial Immortal Path that specialized in primordial spirit cultivation. The Celestial Immortal Path was most compatible with the Three Pure Ones. As for ordinary living beings, they didn't have much of a choice. Cultivating the traditional Celestial Immortal Path was just too difficult. Of course, it wasn't that difficult. They could grit their teeth and overcome it. There was no such thing as suffering in cultivation. Most importantly, the traditional Celestial Immortal Path was just too time-consuming. They would need to cultivate in seclusion for tens of thousands of years at the drop of a hat. This wouldn't have been a problem in the Khanate era. Wasn't it just tens of thousands of years? Everyone was a life form born of heaven and earth, with an endless lifespan. Tens of thousands of years were but a drop in the ocean. It would pass in the blink of an eye, but it wouldn't work now, because with the advent of the postnatal era, those who hadn't reached the Khanate level would have a limited lifespan. Celestial immortals could only enjoy a lifespan of 18,000 years. After 18,000 years, if they couldn't become mystic immortals, they wouldn't be able to escape the end of their lifespan and their souls entering the cycle of reincarnation. Mystic immortals were slightly better than celestial immortals. They could enjoy a lifespan of 1 yuan, which was 129,600 years. But after that, if they couldn't break through to the golden immortal realm, they wouldn't be able to escape the end of their lifespan and reincarnation. In the postnatal era, cultivators could only break through to the golden immortal realm to get rid of the limit of their lifespan. They could truly live forever and live as long as heaven and earth. Therefore, golden immortals had another name, which was the longevity realm, also known as the longevity realm. Under such circumstances, wouldn't it be ridiculous to expect cultivators to spend tens of thousands of years in seclusion to temper their bodies like before in order to break through to the next realm? If they lost their lives, how could they break through? Therefore, the moment the celestial immortal path appeared, Feng Zichen had already expected it to prosper. There was no other reason. It was because the celestial immortal path could allow people to live longer. In the postnatal era, what cultivators valued the most was strength. However, in the postnatal era, although cultivators also valued strength, they valued lifespan more. If one didn't have enough lifespan, no matter how strong they would only be a grain of sand. In this case, what was the use of having strength? Only by completely breaking free from the limit of one's lifespan and not worrying about it would one have the right to pursue strength. At this moment, the appearance of the celestial immortal path could allow all living beings to break through to the next realm faster and obtain more lifespan. In the face of such a temptation, who could refuse? As for the celestial immortal path, not being as strong as the traditional immortal path and being unable to temper the body, these were not problems. When one's lifespan was insufficient, one would naturally focus on increasing one's lifespan. However, after one's lifespan was enough, one should put the pursuit of strength first. What? The body was too weak. That didn't matter. Without the limit of one's lifespan, there would naturally be time to temper it. Immortals, what they didn't lack the most was time. The powerful traditional immortal path would eventually be replaced by the more efficient celestial immortal path because it took too much time. Different environments of heaven and earth created different pursuits. This was the general trend and would not be changed by external forces. Lifespan. The tyranny of the postnatal era had already begun to show. It deprived the innate life forms of the ability to live forever, causing them to have a limited lifespan. It could be expected that as time passed, longevity would become the goal of all living beings and gradually evolve into the theme of the postnatal era. Why would the Feast of Immortality Peaches be so popular in the future? There was no other reason than that the immortality peaches could increase the lifespan of immortals. If one ate a 3,000-year-old immortality peach, one would directly become a celestial immortal. If one ate a 6,000-year-old immortality peach, one would directly become a mystic immortal. Note, a mystic immortal's lifespan is 129,600 years. To mortals, this is already considered immortality. The highest grade immortality peach was 9,000 years old. If one ate one would directly become a golden immortal. From then on, one would live as long as heaven and earth and shine as brightly as the sun and moon. Such a treasure was taken out by the Queen Mother to entertain guests. Which immortal wouldn't like it? It was no wonder that the Queen Mother could use it to attract people's hearts. As for the appearance of the celestial immortal path, could it impact the martial Tao? Feng Zichen said that it didn't matter at all. The heavenly immortal Tao only simplified the traditional immortal Tao. It didn't lower the threshold. In fact, it raised the threshold slightly. Those who couldn't cultivate the traditional immortal Tao in the past still couldn't cultivate the heavenly immortal Tao. Since that was the case, how could it affect the martial Tao? The martial Tao could be said to be a threshold without any threshold. It was the capital that allowed it to stand tall in the eldritch world. No matter how time passed, no matter how the environment changed, as long as people still pursued strength, the martial Tao would never decline. The essence of the martial Tao was to become stronger, and becoming stronger had long become the instinct of living beings. Since that was the case, how could the martial Tao decline? Even if there were many cultivation systems in the Eldritch world, the martial Tao would at most be affected and be in a slump for a period of time. It wouldn't completely decline because of that, unless every living being in the Eldritch world was a genius. That way, there was a possibility that the martial Tao would decline. But was that possible? Everyone was like a dragon? That only existed in dreams. The difference was made by comparison. Therefore, Feng Zichen wasn't worried at all that the appearance of the heavenly immortal Tao would affect the martial Tao. However, the appearance of the heavenly immortal Tao made Feng Zichen see an opportunity to plot against the three pure ones. The clear and turbid qi were interdependent. The connate light qi was absorbed by the heavenly immortal Tao and became a resource for its advancement. But what about the connate turbid qi? Was he going to leave it there and not care? That wouldn't do. One had to know that the impact of the imbalance between clear and turbid was no less than the imbalance between yin and yang. Unfortunately, the three pure ones were born from the connate light qi and were the most noble. Although the connate turbid qi wasn't considered poison to them, it would still make them feel extremely filthy and difficult to approach. In layman's terms, they were born to dislike the connate turbid qi. It was just like how the Magi were born to dislike the connate light qi. Therefore, to let the three pure ones absorb the connate turbid qi was even more uncomfortable than killing them. To the cultivators of the heavenly immortal Tao, the connate turbid qi was a kind of poison that could corrupt their immortal bodies and destroy their cultivation. As a result, the cultivators of the heavenly immortal Tao naturally hated the connate turbid qi. Not to mention absorbing it, they didn't even want to see it. However, the connate turbid qi was placed there and they could not deal with it. Otherwise, once the imbalance between clear and turbid qi led to a disaster, the karma caused by it would all be blamed on the three pure ones. Therefore, the three pure ones would definitely think of a way to solve the problem of too much connate turbid qi to prevent the imbalance between clear and turbid qi in the primordial world. As for how the three pure ones would solve the problem, Feng Zichen wasn't too sure and couldn't guess. However, no matter what method the three pure ones used, Feng Zichen didn't think that it was better than his method. That's right. Feng Zichen already had a plan in his heart about how to solve the problem of too much connate turbid qi. Moreover, he planned to be a good person this time and help the three pure ones solve the problem for free. Since the three pure ones could use the connate clear qi as the foundation to create a heavenly immortal Tao, Feng Zichen could also use the connate turbid qi as the foundation to create a supreme heavenly demon Tao and compete with the heavenly immortal Tao. The immortal Tao was on the stage. How could the demonic Tao be missing? One immortal and one devil, one clear and one turbid. Only in this way could it be in line with the balance of heaven and earth. The appearance of the heavenly demon Tao could be said to have made up for the flaws of the heavenly immortal Tao. It allowed the connate turbid qi to have a place to go. According to this, Feng Zichen had helped the three pure ones a lot and helped them make up for a fatal flaw. However, Feng Zichen didn't intend to ask the three pure ones for compensation. It was all for the safety of the primordial world. It wasn't enough. He was Feng Zichen. He was so selfless. As for the fact that he had created the heavenly demon Tao with the connate turbid qi as the foundation, he had been recognized by the heavenly Tao as making up for the three pure ones' mistakes. As a result, he had taken half of the three pure ones' opportunities. That really had nothing to do with Feng Zichen. He didn't want to snatch the opportunities of the three pure ones. He just couldn't bear to see the primordial world suffer a disaster and made a patch for the great plan of the three pure ones. As for the consequences of doing so, he couldn't care less. After all, the consequences were more important than the safety of all living beings in the world. The three pure ones had created the heavenly immortal Tao and opened up another cultivation system for all living beings. This was a great act of merit. There would definitely be merit from the heavenly Tao. However, this great merit was not complete. There was a huge hidden danger. That was, if the heavenly immortal Tao was allowed to continue developing, it would definitely cause the primordial world to be imbalanced and lead to a world-destroying disaster. The Khanate, turbid Qi, was a whole. How could he use half and throw away the other half? Therefore, although it was a great merit for the three pure ones to create the heavenly immortal Tao, they had also buried a huge hidden danger while obtaining merit. At this moment, Feng Zichen suddenly did the opposite. Using the Khanate turbid Qi as the foundation to create the supreme heavenly demon Tao could be considered to have made up for the flaws of the heavenly immortal Tao. In this way, it was naturally a happy situation for the primordial world. However, it was completely different for the three pure ones. The immortal Tao and the demonic Tao, one pure and one turbid, were opposite but complementary. It could be said that it perfectly complemented the plan of the three pure ones. However, at the same time, it also meant that the demonic Tao would take half of the benefits from the three pure ones. However, this was not what angered the three pure ones the most. With the three pure ones' current status, the benefits brought by the creation of the heavenly immortal Tao were no longer worth their attention. Therefore, what really angered the three pure ones was the influence brought about by the appearance of the heavenly demon Tao. What influence? That was balance. In order to prevent the primordial and turbid from being imbalanced, the heavenly Tao would definitely come out to balance the forces of the immortal Tao and the demonic Tao. In other words, if one side was too strong, the heavenly Tao would suppress the strong side and support the weak side. In such a situation, if it was between two evenly matched forces, it would not be a problem at all. However, it was a big problem for the heavenly immortal Tao and the heavenly demon Tao. The heavenly immortal Tao had the traditional immortal Tao as its foundation. Its forces could definitely expand rapidly in a short time and become a giant in the primordial world. However, the heavenly demon Tao could not. The demonic Tao was almost suppressed to extinction by the Xianmen. It could be said that it did not even have a foundation in the primordial world. The development of the heavenly demon Tao could only rely on itself. It was impossible for it to compete with the heavenly immortal Tao. However, once the heavenly demon Tao and the heavenly immortal Tao formed a symbiotic relationship, the heavenly Tao would definitely support the heavenly demon Tao and suppress the heavenly immortal Tao to achieve a balance between the two. Once this situation was formed, it was equivalent to the three pure ones working hard for half a day to make a wedding dress for someone else. Not only did they not reap much benefits, but they also nurtured an opponent that they could not destroy. In this way, how could the three pure ones not be angry? And this was the big gift that Feng Zichen had prepared for the three pure ones. He believed that once this matter was completed, it would definitely leave an indelible impression on the three pure ones. It would make them feel heartache for the rest of their lives. At the thought of this, Feng Zichen could not help but feel a sense of joy in his heart. He had been suppressed by the three pure ones for a long time. If he took revenge, he would inevitably feel the joy of holding his head high. Moreover, with this troublesome matter, the three pure ones would probably not have the mood to investigate the matters outside the world. With that thought in mind, Feng Zichen silently contacted the ultimate void and the mental demons that were secretly developing in the ultimate void. He handed over the matter of establishing the heavenly demon Tao to them. At the same time, in order to increase their efficiency, Feng Zichen also temporarily handed Hongming Daozhong over to them to help them. Professional matters, it was better to leave it to the professionals. Moreover, it was obviously more appropriate for the ultimate void and the mental demons to step in to establish the heavenly demon Tao than for Feng Zichen to step in. One had to know that the ultimate void was the destined master of the demonic Tao. Now, it was time for him to set things right and reorganize the demonic sect. As for whether he would fail or not, Feng Zichen had never worried about that. Before the three pure ones created the heavenly immortal Tao, Feng Zichen might not have the confidence to create the true demonic Tao. However, after the appearance of the heavenly immortal Tao, he had great confidence. That was because the appearance of the heavenly demon Tao was a supplement to the heavenly immortal Tao. It was beneficial to the primordial world. Therefore, he had the help of the heavens. The most difficult thing had already been done by the three pure ones. Next, the ultimate void and the mental demons only needed to imitate the heavenly immortal Tao step by step, and they would be able to establish the heavenly demon Tao. In addition, with the help of Hongmeng Daozhong, if he could still fail, it could only be said that Feng Zichen deserved to be suppressed by the three pure ones for the rest of his life. Just as Feng Zichen was thinking about how to plot against the three pure ones, the three pure ones did not choose to stop immediately after establishing the heavenly immortal Tao. Instead, they continued to move. Rumble! Kunlun Mountain suddenly shook violently. Soon after, an immortal light that was even more resplendent than before rose from Kunlun Mountain, illuminating the entire primordial world. The immortal light was so strong that even Feng Zichen narrowed his eyes slightly in the boundless starry sky. This is the power of the heavenly Tao. The three pure ones actually used the power of the heavenly Tao. What are they planning to do? Feng Zichen could not help but exclaim in shock as he activated the galaxy cosmic light array to disperse the immortal light. Although the three pure ones were powerful, it was impossible for them to break through the seal of the boundless starry sky and project the immortal light onto Ziwei Star. But now they had done it. It could only be said that they had used the power of the heavenly Tao. Only the power of the heavenly Tao could break through the seal of the boundless starry sky and shine the immortal light in. The reason why the saints were invincible in the primordial world and suppressed the group of primordial chaos Daluo Jinxian was that they could mobilize the power of the heavenly Tao. In the primordial world, who could rival the heavenly Tao? The saints who could mobilize the power of the heavenly Tao were naturally invincible. What are the three pure ones trying to do? They even used the power of the heavenly Tao. At this moment, Feng Zichen looked extremely serious. He put all his attention on Mount Kunlun and carefully watched every move of the three pure ones, trying to figure out their intentions. Feng Zichen was not the only one who paid attention to it. The other saints and great mediums were the same. When they realized that the three pure ones had used the power of the heavenly Tao, everyone knew that something big was going to happen. There would be an unknown change in the primordial world. Otherwise, why would the three pure ones use the power of the heavenly Tao? One had to know that the three pure ones alone were enough to wipe out the entire primordial world. Needless to say, the three of them also used the power of the heavenly Tao. At this time, the three pure ones were probably comparable to Tao ancestor Hongjun. Since the three pure ones had mobilized such a large force, it was obvious that the matter they were plotting was extremely shocking. Therefore, everyone was curious about this, but they were also puzzled. What was it that made the three pure ones go to such lengths? As for destroying it, even Feng Zichen, who had a bad relationship with the three pure ones, did not have such thoughts, let alone the other great mediums. Haha, if they destroyed it at this time, they would be killed by the three pure ones. The three pure ones were definitely ridiculously powerful now. Even if Tao ancestor Hongjun came, he would not dare to say that he could easily suppress them. Under the curious and expectant eyes of everyone, the three pure ones finally took action. Open! When Sanqing shouted in unison, then the whole world disappeared. Everywhere was a vast expanse of whiteness. Only the saints and Daluo Jinxian of the primordial chaos like Feng Zichen could see some clues with their powerful strength. It was a ray of light, a ray of Tao light that rose from Mount Kunlun. It was so bright that it could not be described with words. It was this beam of light that illuminated heaven and earth in a vast expanse of whiteness, obscuring everyone's vision. Its body was emitting mysterious waves that no one could understand. Its power was even more terrifying. Vaguely, Feng Zichen even saw a trace of Panga's axe light from this ray of light. This ray of light was like Panga's axe light. It had the power to split the world. P.S. That's it. Next time, you'll have to wait for a premium item or a big reward. Brothers, I'm still 150 subscriptions away from a premium item, and I've increased by 4,000 subscriptions. In other words, if each of these 4,000 brothers subscribes 50 chapters, I'll almost be a premium item. Brothers, give me your support. I beg you. Chapter 699. Rumble. The Tao light streaked across the sky and hit the Khanate myriad Tao. With a crack, something seemed to break. Specks of light scattered from the Khanate myriad Tao and floated down to the eldritch wilderness. Swish, another beam of immortal light slashed through the air, repeating the same action as before and slamming into Tao of the Khanate myriad Tao. Boom! The Khanate myriad Tao trembled and scattered more specks of light. Swish, 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 one after another, immortal light rose from Mount Kunlun and slashed at the Khanate myriad Tao. The three pure ones didn't stop until the 36th immortal light hit the Khanate myriad Tao. Meanwhile, the innate myriad Tao's body was covered in cracks after being attacked by the 36 immortal lights. Strands of the origin of great Tao were seeping out of the cracks and drifting down to the eldritch wilderness. What are the three pure ones doing? Feng Zichen stared blankly at the scene in front of him. He could not figure out what the three pure ones were planning. Why did they attack the Khanate myriad Tao for no reason? Did they think that he had too much merit and wanted to waste some? Could it be that they coveted the origin of great Tao? Although the origin of great Tao was precious, it was nothing compared to the consequences of destroying the Khanate myriad Tao. It wasn't worth it. Just as Feng Zichen was trying to figure out the three pure ones' intention, the eldritch wilderness changed again. The origin of great Tao seeping out of the Khanate myriad Tao gradually resonated with the acquired qi in the air after falling into the eldritch wilderness. It even showed signs of merging. Rumble. The origin of great Tao that had been tainted by acquired qi was undergoing a shocking transformation from the Khanate myriad Tao to the Khanate myriad Tao. Before long, when the origin of great Tao finished evolving, there was a new set of great Tao in the world. It was completely acquired and different from the Khanate myriad Tao. Whoosh! Silently the heavenly Tao descended. The boundless power spread out and gradually enveloped the new Khanate myriad Tao. Then, an astonishing change happened. With the help of the heavenly Tao, the new Khanate myriad Tao was perfecting at a speed visible to the naked eye. Soon, it evolved its own postnatal rules and created a huge net of rules that enveloped the untainted world. At that moment, heaven and earth had truly changed. The aura of the innate myriad Taos gradually disappeared and was replaced by a completely different aura. It was the post-celestial myriad Tao. At this moment, the acquired myriad Tao replaced the Khanate myriad Tao and became the pillar of the primitive world. Buzz, buzz, buzz. Inexplicably, a thick sense of sorrow filled the air, as if mourning the glory of the Xiantian era. If even the primordial myriad Tao was replaced by the acquired myriad Tao, then the traces of the primordial era in the untainted land would disappear completely. This time, the Xiantian era had truly become a thing of the past, existing only in the memories of all living beings. How generous! At this time, the great masters, including Feng Zichen, finally understood the three purities goal. This was a complete transformation of heaven and earth. Wasn't changing the rules of the great path of heaven and earth the same as changing the world? All of a sudden, the three purities really became the Tao ancestors of the postnatal era. Their status was close to that of Feng Zichen, the postnatal Tao ancestor. However, the three purities did not do this without paying a price. Not only did they hurt the primordial myriad Tao, but they also took away their status, making them completely history. How could the primordial myriad Tao not hate the three purities? Perhaps the primordial myriad Tao could not do anything to the three purities, but their disciples were unlucky. In the future, unless the disciples of the three purities could create their own primordial Tao or become the origin Daluo Jingxian. Otherwise, they could forget about comprehending the primordial Tao. The primordial myriad Tao in the untainted land would label the descendants of the three purities and close the door of the great path forever. Want to use the primordial myriad Tao to attain Tao? Wake up, stop dreaming. The descendants of the three purities had no chance. However, it did not matter. Anyway, the disciples of the three purities had been implicated by their master and could not attain Tao. It did not matter to them whether they cultivated the primordial myriad Tao or not. On the contrary, the postnatal myriad Tao made them see the possibility of taking a step forward. Rumble. The net of rules formed by the postnatal great path spread rapidly and soon reached the boundless starry sky, about to cover it. However, how could Feng Zichen allow this to happen? The boundless starry sky was self-contained and would not allow external forces to touch this place. Retreat. With a thought, Feng Zichen activated the Star River cosmic light formation. Immediately, the stars rotated and a vast river of stars, accompanied by dazzling cosmic light, flowed slowly and blocked the postnatal myriad Tao outside the boundless starry sky. At the same time, powerful auras rose from the blessed caves in the untainted land. The powerful divines in the untainted land were using various means to block the net of rules formed by the postnatal myriad Tao outside their Taoist temples, not allowing it to come close. It was recognized in the untainted land that the postnatal realm was far inferior to the primordial realm. In this case, how could the powerful divines allow the postnatal myriad Tao to enter their Taoist temples and change the rules of heaven and earth of their Taoist temples? On the Emperor Star, after Feng Zichen blocked the postnatal myriad Tao, he seemed to have thought of this and suddenly separated a strand of divine thought and came to the untainted land. In the untainted land, on a nameless hill, Feng Zichen's divine thought incarnation quietly appeared. Then he didn't do anything. He just raised his arm gently, and with a crack, the void shattered layer by layer. Sure enough, compared to before, after the rules of heaven and earth changed from postnatal to postnatal, the void seems to be more fragile. Standing there, Feng Zichen said silently, "This test made him sure that the untainted land was undoubtedly weaker than before. The power of the postnatal myriad Tao was far inferior to the postnatal myriad Tao. The untainted land supported by the postnatal myriad Tao was naturally far less solid than the prenatal myriad Tao. It was normal for the world to be weaker. But at the same time, it also meant that the strength of the cultivators who practiced the postnatal Tao was far inferior to that of the cultivators who practiced the postnatal Tao. Furthermore, the difference in strength was not just a little bit. The higher the realm, the greater the gap. Especially after the realm of Daluo Jingxian, the gap between the postnatal and postnatal heavens was even more obvious. Not to mention anything else. Just the fact that Daluo Jingxian was immortal was something that Daluo Jingxian, who practiced the postnatal Tao, could not achieve. Because compared to the postnatal Tao was too weak. The reason why Daluo Jingxian was immortal was that they had branded their true spirit imprints on the origin of the great Tao that they had proven. Therefore, as long as the Tao that they cultivated was not destroyed, Daluo Jingxian could achieve immortality. Since the postnatal myriad Tao was named postnatal, it meant that they were born from the postnatal earth and with a true foundation of the untainted land. Therefore, as long as the heavens and earth were not destroyed, the postnatal myriad Tao would not be destroyed. Then the cultivators who practiced the postnatal Tao as Daluo Jingxian could also achieve immortality. However, the postnatal Tao could not. The rules that were created by humans were very fragile. The great magicians could crush them with just a little bit of strength. Thinking about it, even the postnatal myriad Tao was so fragile, let alone the Daluo Jingxian who had attained the Tao. It was impossible to achieve immortality. Both sides were not on the same level at all. The Daluo Jingxian, who had attained the postnatal Tao, was known as the Taoist priests. However, the Daluo Jingxian who had attained the postnatal Tao was only the Daluo Jingxian. It was likely that the Daluo Jingxian of the postnatal era would not even be able to achieve the postnatal God-fiend body. Saying that they were Daluo Jingxian was an insult to the words Daluo Jingxian. Of course, it was true that the postnatal Tao changed the postnatal Tao and the strength of cultivators would weaken. However, it would undoubtedly make it much easier to cultivate. How could the simple postnatal Tao be compared to the obscure and difficult to understand postnatal Tao? It was naturally much easier to comprehend. The deeper one's comprehension of the great Tao, the faster one's realm would rise. Perhaps. After the postnatal Tao became the postnatal Tao, there were all kinds of disadvantages. However, just the fact that the postnatal Tao was easier to cultivate than the postnatal Tao was enough to make the cultivators of the primordial world impatiently acknowledge him. There was no other reason. It was because after the great Tao became simple, the improvement of one's realm would become very fast. And the faster one's realm improved, the easier it was to obtain longevity. In the postnatal era, the most troublesome thing for all living beings was that they could not live forever. In order to obtain longevity, they were willing to give up everything, let alone change to the postnatal Tao. At this moment, Feng Ziqin vaguely understood why so many geniuses could appear in the later generations to fight across realms, and even cross several realms in a row. In the end, this was because the laws of heaven and earth had weakened as a whole. In the postnatal era, before Daluo Jingxian, there might have been situations where people fought across realms. However, after Daluo Jingxian, such situations rarely happened. Those who could become Daluo Jingxian were all geniuses who could suppress a generation. They were all invincible existences in the same realm. No one was necessarily weaker than the other. Especially between Daluo Jingxian and Tai Jingxian, there was an insurmountable gap. In the postnatal era, Tai Jingxian had almost no possibility of going against Daluo Jingxian. It could even be said that Tai Jingxian was like an ant in front of Daluo Jingxian. The gap was really too big. However, in the postnatal era, Tai Jingxian defeated Daluo Jingxian and even killed Daluo Jingxian. It was not uncommon. The reason was not that Tai Jingxian had become stronger, but that Daluo Jingxian had become weaker. He could not be immortal, let alone transcend the long river of fate and stand in the long river of time and space. In this way, Daluo Jingxian's greatest advantage was gone. Compared to Tai Jingxian, he had a deeper understanding of the great Tao and more powerful magic power. Other than that, he had no other advantages. If that was the case, how could the perfected gold immortals of the postnatal era crush primordial immortals? They only needed a powerful magical treasure, and they could obtain a power that was far beyond that of a perfected gold immortal. Wouldn't it be a piece of cake to defeat him? This was also why in the apotheosized era, the second-generation disciples of the Chan school, who had cultivated for countless years, were no match for those disciples who only had a few years of cultivation with magic treasures. For postnatal cultivators, the increase in strength of powerful spirit treasures far exceeded their own cultivation. It had to be said that this was really a great tragedy. After cultivating for hundreds of millions of years, they were no match for a child with a powerful spirit treasure. Wasn't this ironic? The strength of cultivators came from themselves. Spirit treasures only played a supporting role. However, as the world became easier, the situation changed. The strength of cultivators came from magic treasures, and cultivation was the supporting role. Wasn't this putting the cart before the horse? Therefore, this was the sorrow of cultivators and the greatest irony of the world. The culprit behind all of this was the high and mighty Three Pure Ones. The world was getting weaker and weaker. The cultivators were getting weaker and weaker. It didn't matter. As long as they were getting stronger and stronger, it was enough. In order to obtain strength, the three pure ones could be said to be unscrupulous. They were talking about harming the world to strengthen themselves. As long as the saints did not die, the bandits would not stop. Rumble. After the postnatal Tao completely enveloped the primordial world, the Khanate myriad Tao stopped spilling the origin of the great Tao. Instead, it slowly recovered with the help of the origin of the heavenly Tao. It returned to the deepest part of the world and completely hid. However, there was no doubt that after losing so much origin of the great Tao, the Khanate myriad Tao was obviously much weaker than before. It was likely that the Khanate myriad Tao would enter a period of weakness in the following period of time. This was obviously not a good thing for cultivators who cultivated the Khanate Tao. Originally, with the isolation of the postnatal Tao, it was very difficult for cultivators who cultivated the Khanate Tao to sense the Khanate Tao. In this way, if the Khanate Tao entered a period of weakness, it would be even more difficult for these cultivators to comprehend the Khanate Tao. It was estimated that those cultivators who were originally unwilling to change to the postnatal Tao would have no choice but to change to the postnatal Tao when they could not sense the Khanate Tao. Although cultivating the postnatal Tao would weaken, at least they could continue to become stronger. However, if they cultivated the Khanate Tao, their future would be hopeless. Since that was the case, it was obvious how to choose. Sigh. The last chance for the Khanate Tao to recover was gone just like that. This plan, one step after another, calculated the Khanate Tao tightly and did not leave any room for it. It had to be said that the three pure ones' methods were perfect. According to this, the rise of the postnatal Tao was inevitable. This was the general trend and could not be resisted. Didn't you see that even the heavenly Tao had come and facilitated all of this? Otherwise, with just the three pure ones' strength, how could they complete all of this in such a short period of time? When everything calmed down and the primordial world returned to peace, the heavenly Tao also began to reward the three pure ones according to their merits. The first thing to be given to them was naturally the merit for establishing the heavenly immortal Tao. Dazzling golden light gathered in the sky and turned into a huge golden cloud that descended towards the three pure ones. That was the Xianhuang merit, the supreme treasure that everyone dreamed of. Looking at the amount of Xianhuang merit, at least 10 real Daluo Jingxian or a quasi-saint could be born. This amount was not small. Even with the three pure ones' wealth, they had to pay attention to it. Therefore, when they saw the merit descending, the three pure ones smiled for the first time in a long time. However, the moment the smile appeared on their faces, it froze on the spot. Then, torrential anger rose in their hearts. The reason was that the ruins of the End and the mental demon had finally made a move. The scene pulled to the previous moment, which was when the Xianhuang merit had just descended. In the northernmost part of the primordial world, the land of the End, where the ruins of the End were located, the peace that had lasted for countless years was broken. Two black-robed figures quietly appeared and stood quietly above the ruins of the End. Then the two of them set up an altar and placed offerings on it. They swore to the heavens, "Today the two of us, the ruins of the End mental demon, have sensed that the world is lacking and the clear and turbid are out of balance. Therefore, we have specially established the supreme heavenly demon Tao to refine our bodies with the Khanate turbid Qi. One immortal and one devil, one clear and one turbid. Make up for the lack of heaven and earth and maintain the balance of the clear and turbid. That is the principle of the cycle of heaven and earth. I hope the heavens will bear witness. Heavenly demon Tao establish." As the voices of the ruins of the End and the mental demon fell, a powerful demonic aura suddenly rose between heaven and earth. It merged with the Khanate turbid Qi and gave birth to a supreme demonic scripture. Boom! The demonic scripture shattered, turning into countless strange runes that scattered into the primordial world. At the same time, in the minds of all living beings in the primordial world, the cultivation method of the heavenly demon, Tao, naturally appeared. This was a cultivation method that was extremely opposed to the heavenly immortal Tao. The heavenly immortal Tao was the immortal Tao, and the heavenly demon Tao was the demonic Tao. The heavenly immortal Tao collected the connate clear qi to cultivate, and the heavenly demon Tao collected the connate turbid qi to cultivate. The heavenly immortal Tao specialized in cultivating the essence soul, and the heavenly demon Tao specialized in refining the body. In short, the heavenly demon Tao would do whatever it was that was against the heavenly immortal Tao. These two cultivation methods could be said to be two extremes. Of course, although these two cultivation methods were opposing, their origins were still the same. From the same origin, they developed in two opposite directions and reached their respective peaks. In other words, the heavenly immortal Tao and the heavenly demon Tao could be cultivated together. One specialized in refining the body, while the other specialized in cultivating the essence soul. They complemented each other. If they could achieve greater mastery, they could be said to be invincible among the same level. However, this was just talk. How difficult would it be to achieve this? The heavenly immortal Tao was the immortal Tao, and the heavenly demon Tao was the demonic Tao. As the saying went, immortals and demons could not coexist. Just letting the two coexist was enough to stump countless geniuses, not to mention achieving greater mastery at the same time. It was almost impossible. On this side, as soon as the ruins of the end and the mental demon established the heavenly demon Tao, the heavenly Tao sensed it. As a result, the primordial merit that should have fallen into the hands of the three pure ones suddenly split in half and flew to the ruins of the end and the mental demon. How could the three pure ones not be angry when the cooked duck flew away? Not to mention, after a short hesitation, the three pure ones figured out the crux of the matter. Undoubtedly, they were even more furious. It had always been the three pure ones who schemed against others. When was it their turn to be schemed against? And they were schemed against so ruthlessly. It could be said that all the efforts they had made previously had been made for others, especially when the person who schemed against them was their mortal enemy, the demonic Tao. P.S. Begging for a subscription. I'm almost dead. Premium products will definitely be explosive. Chapter 700. Fury. At this moment, the fury in the three pure ones' hearts had completely materialized, manifesting beside them and igniting the void. Swoosh! Almost simultaneously, the Taiji diagram, Panga's banner, and the four immortal slaying swords flew out from behind the three pure ones, attacking the ultimate and the inner demon. How long had it been since the birth of the ultimate and the inner demon? Only a little over 10 million years. Even with the support of the demonic way, his cultivation was only at the level of a great medium. Compared to the three purities and the others, there was a huge difference. There was no comparison at all. Not to mention, the three pure ones had even used their connate treasures. Therefore, the ultimate and the inner demon could not block this attack even if they gave it their all. If they were hit, death was the only outcome. There was no exception. Unfortunately, Gue Su and the inner demon had no intention of resisting at all in the face of this unparalleled power. The moment the three connate cardinal treasures landed, the two of them disappeared into the sinkhole. Rumble. That tyrannical power exploded in the sky above the sinkhole, destroying everything, but it did not harm the sinkhole at all. The ultimate was the end of heaven and earth, the most important part of the great cycle of heaven and earth. It was an important place in the wilderness and could not be destroyed. Otherwise, heaven and earth would become incomplete because of it. Therefore, even the three pure ones didn't dare to destroy the end of the ruins. The price would be too great. Seeing the two of them hide in the ultimate, the three pure ones had to admit that they could not do anything to them for the time being. However, they had to vent their anger. Otherwise, they would not be happy. Buzz, buzz, buzz. With a single thought from the three pure ones, the three connate, peerless treasures suddenly circled around the ultimate and released an unparalleled power. They formed a huge screen of light in the sky above the ultimate, enveloping the entire place. It was a seal. Unable to destroy the ultimate and force the two of them out, the three pure ones simply sealed the entire ultimate to trap them. Needless to say, it was a good idea. If the ultimate and the inner demon could not come out, how could the new Sky Fiend sect compete with the Sky Immortal sect, even if it was mostly crippled? As for the imbalance between clear and turbid, since the three pure ones dared to establish the heavenly immortal Tao, they naturally had means to resolve the issue. It was just that they were not as brilliant as the sinkhole's heavenly fiend Tao. If the ultimate and the inner demon had not suddenly established the heavenly demon sect and caught the three pure ones off guard, their plan to target the connate turbid chi would have been put on the agenda. Then what did the heavenly fiend sect have to do with him? However, although the three pure ones' plan was good, their seal could not seal the ultimate and the inner demons. Indeed, even if Ruin's End and the mental demons worked together, they were helpless against the seal cast down by the three purities. They were unable to do anything to it. While the interior might not be damaged, the exterior might not be. Feng Zichen is still outside. Since he had fallen out with the three pure ones, he naturally had no scruples in doing things. So what if he destroyed the three pure ones' seal and released the two Tao Lords of the heavenly fiend sect? In short, as long as it was something that could make the three pure ones unhappy, Feng Zichen dared to do it. At this moment, Feng Zichen was planning to attack directly after the three pure ones relaxed. He would use the boundless power of the starry sky to break the seal left by the three pure ones in the ultimate. Haha, how interesting. Someone actually dared to pull a tooth out of the tiger's mouth and plot against the three fellow Taoists on Mount Kunlun. How interesting. I think the expressions of those three fellow Taoists must be very good. At this moment, the great divine masters of the primordial world also understood what had just happened and could not help but laugh out loud. There were not many things that could make the three pure ones suffer. Humph. On the other side, the three pure ones who had put away their connate cardinal treasures could not help but snort coldly with a sullen face. It was not good to argue about such things. Rumble. After the heavenly immortal path merit, even more Xianhuang merit began to gather in the sky. That was the merit of changing the world. There were so many of them that they almost covered half of the sky. Although it was not as much as Nua's merit of creating humans and the Empress of Earth's reincarnation, it was comparable to Feng Zichen's merit of rebuilding the boundless starry sky. Changing the world affected the entire primordial world. It could be said that the merit was immeasurable. It was normal for the three pure ones to have so much merit. Rumble. It was as if the sun had fallen. The dazzling Xianhuang merits poured down from the sky and landed majestically on Mount Kunlun. However, the three pure ones did not move to collect the merits when they saw them. Instead, they each used their divine powers to shatter the merits that were descending. With a boom, the golden light of merits that was like the sun shattered and scattered into countless light spots, landing on the bodies of the third-generation disciples of the Xian sect. As the merits entered their bodies, the negative karma that surrounded the spiritual altars of the third-generation disciples of the Xian sect began to slowly dissipate. After an unknown period of time, when the merits were completely exhausted, the negative karma of the third-generation disciples of the Xian sect also disappeared. In a trance, the third-generation disciples felt as if the clouds had cleared and the fog had cleared. The barrier that had troubled them for so many years had completely disappeared. After so many years, they could see the path ahead again. For a moment, the third-generation disciples could not help but shed tears of joy. How many years had it been? How many years had they been trapped in the realm of Tai Jingxian? In the past, no matter how hard they cultivated, they could not take a step forward. They could only watch those who were not as talented as them surpass them step by step and leave them far behind. How could that be a terrible feeling? It was impossible to say that these disciples did not feel hatred in their hearts. In the past, they might have thought that it was a great blessing to be able to become the disciple of a saint. But now they only regretted it. What blessing! It was clearly a huge trap. Originally, with their talent, even if they did not become the disciple of a saint, they could still cultivate the Daluo Jinxian. But because they had become the disciple of a saint, they had wasted countless years and missed out on too much. So, at this moment, these third-generation disciples saw the hope of breaking through again. That joy was no less than a new life. Sai, seeing the scene of his disciples crying tears of joy, the heavenly Lord of the Origin could not help but show a trace of guilt on his face. It was he who had implicated his disciples and caused them to lose their great future. He was the heavenly Lord of the Origin. After all, he had let his disciples down. Time flew by. In the blink of an eye, thousands of years had passed. At this time, the third-generation disciples of the Xian sect had changed to the postnatal path because they had been abandoned by the prenatal path. Their foundations were deep to begin with, and their countless years of experience were not in vain. After countless years of hard work, their mana, primordial spirits, and physical bodies had long been polished to an extremely perfect state. At this moment, when they changed to the postnatal path, their foundation exploded, and their cultivation could be said to have advanced by leaps and bounds. In addition, the postnatal path was simpler than the prenatal path, so their progress was faster. It did not take long for them to cultivate the Daluo Jinxian. Of course, that was the Daluo Jinxian of the postnatal path, not the Daluo Taoist priests of the prenatal path. Not to mention these disciples, in the deepest part of Kunlun Mountain, where the ancestral bloodline of the East was, the three pure ones were gathered together as if they were preparing for a big plan. In front of the three pure ones, there was a huge ball of prenatal, turbid qi floating in the air and slowly rotating. Good Lord! Prenatal turbid qi origin. In Kunlun Mountain, which was known as the ancestral land of celestial immortals, such a large ball of prenatal turbid qi origin appeared in front of the three pure ones. Who would believe that there was no problem? At this moment, the three pure ones were surrounding this ball of prenatal turbid qi origin, and their hands were surrounded by the sacred light of creation. They were going to, that's right, they were creating living beings. The three pure ones were obviously going to use the prenatal turbid qi origin as the foundation to create a race to alleviate the imbalance between the primordial world and the primordial world. A race created with the prenatal turbid qi origin naturally had to feed on the prenatal turbid qi. Therefore, in a sense, as long as there were enough of this race, then with their efforts, the consumption rate of the prenatal turbid qi would definitely catch up with the consumption rate of the prenatal clear qi. In this way, as long as it was done properly, the primordial world would never have an imbalance between the prenatal and the primordial world. And this was the method that the three pure ones had thought of in the beginning to deal with the imbalance between the prenatal and the primordial world. However, before they could implement this plan, the heavenly fiend path appeared and completely disrupted their arrangements. However, it was not too late to make a move now. Now that the two demon ancestors of the heavenly fiend path were sealed in the ultimate by them and could not come out, the development of the heavenly fiend path would inevitably be hindered. And this was the opportunity for the three pure ones. As long as they could develop the race created with the prenatal turbid qi origin into a behemoth that could replace the heavenly fiend path in the shortest time possible, then wouldn't the heavenly fiend path become a joke? The situation could be reversed by them in the blink of an eye. It was with this thought that after the three pure ones completed the transformation of the world, they did not bother to instruct their disciples and directly went into the deepest part of Kunlun Mountain. That was where the ancestral bloodline of the East was. There was definitely no lack of the prenatal turbid qi origin. Just like that, the three pure ones stayed in the depths of Kunlun Mountain for thousands of years. In these thousands of years, they finally made all the preparations and began to complete the last step of the plan, creating living beings. In order to ensure that the plan would not go wrong, the three pure ones made up their minds. They did not plan to use the creation divine ability that they had comprehended to create living beings. Instead, they used a connate cardinal treasure of the creation attribute. Go! The Grand Pure One shouted softly. He threw his hand casually and raised the dragon-headed cane in his hand. After him, the Heavenly Lord of Primordial Beginning and the Grand Master of Heaven also raised their Tao, proving treasures. The three treasures, Jade Rui and the Qingping Sword. Buzz, buzz, buzz. The three Tao, proving treasures, met in the air. As their auras spread, they gradually resonated. Then, the figures of the three Tao, proving treasures, gradually became illusory, and a 24th grade green lotus flower slowly appeared in the void. In an instant, the entire earth vein was filled with creation aura. That's right, this green lotus flower. It was the connate cardinal treasure that had long been destroyed, the 24th grade creation green lotus. The power of the three pure ones' dragon-headed cane, the three treasures Jade Rui, and the Qingping Sword reappeared in the deepest part of Kunlun Mountain. The heaven-opening treasure, the creation green lotus. The living beings created with the creation green lotus were definitely much stronger than the living beings created by the three pure ones themselves. There was no doubt about that. After all, there were specializations. When the creation green lotus appeared, a dense and almost inseparable creation aura appeared and merged into the origin of the connate turbid chi. Buzz, buzz, buzz. After absorbing the creation aura, the origin of the connate turbid chi began to tremble, and a wisp of vitality slowly appeared on its body. Swoosh! Seeing this, rays of creation divine light suddenly bloomed from the creation green lotus and continuously brushed against the origin of the connate turbid chi. And every time the origin of the connate turbid chi was brushed by the creation divine light, the vitality on its body became denser. Gradually, the aura of life emerged from within. Whoosh! The creation green lotus trembled slightly, and a mysterious wave spread out and entered the origin of the connate turbid chi. Immediately, a shocking change happened. The origin of the connate turbid chi seemed to be stimulated and began to squirm violently. Then, a stream of origin chi rolled down from its body and landed on the ground, turning into a small yellow beast. Awoo! A low roar of a beast was heard from the newborn little beast, signifying the birth of a new race. Crack! The moment the little beast was born, a thunderclap sounded in the clear sky, and a loud thunder resounded throughout the three realms. It was the heaven and earth that sensed the birth of a new race and celebrated its birth with thunder and lightning. The scene turned back to the depths of Kunlun Mountain. The birth of the little beast was like some kind of omen. Soon after it, more little beasts were born. No new little beasts were born until the origin of the connate turbid chi was exhausted. At this moment, there were already 129,600 little beasts born from the origin of the connate turbid chi, which was exactly the number of 1 yuan. Heavenly Tao above. Today, the Grand Clear, Jade Clear, and Prime Clear saw the imbalance between the purity and turbidity of the heaven and earth, so they specially established the demon beast race to balance the purity and turbidity. At this moment, the three clear ones suddenly spoke. Then, they waved their sleeves and swept these newborn demon beasts into the primordial world. Rumble! As soon as they finished speaking, the heaven and earth immediately sensed it, and merit descended, acknowledging the existence of this race. From this moment on, the race that the three clear ones created with the origin of the connate turbid chi was called Demon Beast. It was funny. The race created by the immortal Tao's Tao ancestor was not called a mortal beast. but demon beast. How ironic. Good move. The 3 clear ones are really good. On the Emperor Star, Feng Zichen hammered the armrest and could not help but exclaim in shock. The moment the demon beasts were born, he understood the 3 clear ones' plan. It was precisely because he understood the 3 clear ones' plan that he was so shocked. The 3 clear ones' reaction speed was really fast. He had just schemed against them. It had only been a short while, and they had already thought of a solution and counterattacked. If the 3 clear ones' plan really succeeded, the heavenly fiend path would be crippled. The efforts of the Void of End and the inner demon during this period of time would also be wasted. Through the layers of void, one could see that the heavenly fiend path's luck had suddenly become unstable. And this was caused by the impact of the demon beast race's luck. There was no doubt that once the demon beast race developed and grew stronger, they would definitely replace the heavenly fiend path. No, he was here to cause trouble. How could he let the 3 clear ones' plan succeed? With this thought in mind, Feng Zichen made his move. Rumble. At this moment, Zhou shook and emitted a bright light. A river of stars appeared and flowed through the stars. There was a flash of cosmic light, illuminating the boundless starry sky. Galactic cosmic light formation, rise. In the cold and silent starry sky, Feng Zichen's majestic voice suddenly sounded. Then a pillar of starlight hung down from the boundless starry sky, as if it had pierced through the entire world and rushed straight to the Void of End. Crack! Under the attack of this starlight, the seal set up by the 3 clear ones with the connate cardinal treasure shattered with a loud bang. At this point, the Void of End and the inner demon regained their freedom. How dare you! Almost at the moment the seal shattered, the furious voice of the 3 clear ones sounded on Kunlun Mountain. Before the voice fell, the 3 connate cardinal treasures, the Tai Chi diagram, the Panga banner, and the immortal slaying sword formation, had already broken through the sky and attacked Feng Zichen on the Emperor Star. Good timing. Seeing this, Feng Zichen said good and directly activated the galactic cosmic light formation. Countless starlight gathered and blocked the path of the 3 connate cardinal treasures. Boom! The starlight collided with the 3 connate cardinal treasures, and a violent force spread out, causing the wilderness to shake. Under this attack, the world showed signs of instability. Boom! 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 The aftershocks dissipated, and the starlight was completely destroyed. The 3 connate cardinal treasures also stopped in front of the boundless starry sky. Then, without waiting for the 2 sides to continue fighting, the will of the heavenly Tao suddenly descended and forcibly stopped the battle. He didn't see how the heavenly Tao acted, but he felt a supreme power suddenly appear between heaven and earth. It was vast and mighty, and it crushed everything. Then the 3 connate cardinal treasures flew back and fell back into Kunlun Mountain. The heavenly cycle stellar force that filled the world also rolled back and returned to the boundless starry sky. The heavenly Tao did not allow a battle at the origin Tao level to break out in the wilderness. Therefore, the 2 sides were forcibly separated. Of course, if they really wanted to fight, that was fine, but they had to move to the chaos outside the heavens first. It was fine to fight in the chaos outside the heavens, but not in the wilderness. After separating the 2 sides, the heavenly Tao did not stop there. Instead, it gave each side a ban, ordering them not to step out of their respective dojos for a period of 1 yuan hui. This was a warning. It was also an example to the others. Even great Emperor Ziwei and the 3 pure ones were punished, let alone others. In the future, if any powerful beings wanted to fight in the wilderness, they would have to think twice. Humph! In the face of the heavenly Tao's ban, Feng Zichen only snorted coldly and did not say anything. However, the 3 pure ones' expressions were undoubtedly very ugly. If they were not allowed to go out during the yuan hui, how many things would they delay? Especially at such a critical moment. If they could not go out during the yuan hui, Wouldn't that give the heavenly fiend sect time to develop? At this moment, the three pure ones could not help but suspect that the heavenly Tao was doing it on purpose. P.S. Please subscribe. Please subscribe. 2,892 subscriptions have been subscribed. There's still 108 left. Brothers, do your best. Chapter 701. They could use this excuse to attack the heavenly immortal path and support the heavenly fiend path. However, no matter what they guessed, they had to listen to the orders of the heavenly Tao. They were bound to suffer this loss. All right, the heavens are really helping the Western sect. Far away in the west, Zhuan-Ti and the other two could not help but feel happy when they saw the three pure ones and Feng Zichen being confined by the heavenly Tao. How could they not be happy? If the three pure ones and Feng Zichen were sealed, wouldn't the primordial world fall into their hands and let them do whatever they wanted? This was what it meant to be a fisherman reaping the benefits when the snipe and the clam fought. Who wouldn't be happy when fortune fell from the sky when they were at home? Since they were the biggest in the primordial world, the plan they had been preparing for a long time could finally be carried out. Enlighten the ferocious beasts, the Western sect's opportunity to prosper. Originally, if Zhuan-Ti and the other two dared to enlighten the ferocious beasts, they would definitely be obstructed by the three pure ones. But now, the three pure ones were in seclusion and could not take half a step out of Kunlun Mountain. Wasn't this a heaven-sent opportunity to help them prosper the Western sect? Thinking of this, Zhuan-Ti and the other two felt a little excited. Then they started to move in full swing. Not to mention how busy the two of them were in the Western sect. Even in the ruins of the End and the Inner Demon were also very busy. The three pure ones created the magical beast clan to break the foundation of their heavenly fiend path. As the Tao ancestors of the heavenly fiend path, they naturally had to fight back and take revenge. Otherwise, wouldn't the world think that they were afraid of the three pure ones? They would also think that the heavenly fiend path was inferior to the heavenly immortal path. That wouldn't do. They hadn't even fought yet. How did they know that the heavenly fiend path was no match for the heavenly immortal path? They were afraid before the battle. It wasn't the style of the ruins of the End and the Inner Demon. So they wanted to take revenge. As for how to take revenge, the methods were already made. Didn't the three pure ones use the origin of the Khanate turbid chi to create the foundation of their heavenly fiend path? Then they would follow suit and use the innate pure chi to evolve an immortal beast clan to break the foundation of the heavenly immortal path and compete with the demon beast clan. The two clans happened to be one pure and one turbid, one devil and one immortal, opposing yet complementary. With this thought in mind, Gui Su and Inner Demon immediately took action. The matter of creating the immortal beasts should be done sooner rather than later. Otherwise, when the Beast Clan gained a foothold in the Eldritch world, how could the immortal Beast Clan compete with them? Did he rely on his iron head? In the deepest part of the sinkhole, in a world that contained countless creations, the sinkhole and the inner demons were circling a ball of Khanate clear chi origin. As the saying goes, when things reach an extreme, they will move in the opposite direction. As the final land of the universe, the ultimate gathered the densest aura of destruction in the world. Over time, it naturally gave birth to an astonishing land of creation. And this was the origin of the creation world beneath the feet of the sinkhole and the mental demons. As for the innate pure chi, it was sponsored by Feng Zichen. The boundless starry sky was so close to the heavenly realm. Over the years, Feng Zichen had intentionally or unintentionally collected a lot of innate pure chi. At this moment, he took it all out and gave it to the mental demons and the sinkhole so that they could compete with the three pure ones. In addition, Feng Zichen also gave them the 24th grade green lotus of creation, a Khanate cardinal treasure, for them to create immortal beasts. Since the three pure ones could use the green lotus of creation to create demonic beasts, Guay-Su and the mental demons could not fall behind. They also had to use the green lotus of creation to create immortal beasts. The three pure ones were not the only ones who had the green lotus of creation. Feng Zichen also had one, and it was even stronger than the one in the three pure ones' hands. With the three pure ones template for creating demonic beasts, Guay-Su and the mental demons' process of creating the immortal beast clan was very smooth. The same method, the same process, the same Dharma treasure. The only difference was that the person controlling the Khanate cardinal treasure and the Khanate pure chi origin had become the Khanate pure chi origin. In less than 1,000 years, the immortal beast clan was born in Guay-Su. Just like the demonic beast clan, the new immortal beast clan also had 129,600 members, which was the number of 1 yuan. Heavenly Tao above. Today, Guay-Su and the mental demons have sensed the birth of the demonic beast clan. They are afraid that the immortals and demons of the primordial world will be unbalanced. Therefore, they specially established the immortal beast clan to balance the world. May the heavenly Tao be the judge. After bringing the immortal beast clan out of Guay-Su, the mental demons and Guay-Su announced to the heavenly Tao, "Rumble." Immediately, the heavenly Tao sensed it. Merit descended and landed on the two of them. Looking at the amount of merit, it was clearly no different from the merit obtained by the three pure ones. Bastard. A furious voice came from Kunlun Mountain. It carried a shocking aura, stirring up the boundless wind and clouds, shaking the heavens and earth. It was the anger of the three pure ones. Clearly, the three pure ones were extremely furious about Guay-Su and the mental demons' actions of creating the immortal beast clan. Unfortunately, it was useless for them to be angry, because under the seal of the heavenly Tao, they could not walk out of Kunlun Mountain at all. Right now, all they could do was be infuriated. Other than making people laugh, there was no other use. At this moment, even the great divinities of the primordial world could not help but laugh. It was too funny. No, it was too much. So, the two demon ancestors of the heavenly fiend sect could catch the three pure ones and keep pulling them out. They were not afraid of pulling them out. This was not the way to pull out wool. It was too much. For a moment, everyone gloated over the three pure ones' misfortune. Anyone with discerning eyes could see that the two demon ancestors who suddenly appeared were deliberately targeting the three pure ones. They would do whatever the three pure ones did. They looked like they were going to fight the three pure ones to the end. The world was so big, and there were all kinds of strange things. There were actually two people who had defeated the three pure ones. The future of the primordial world would probably be interesting. Looking at the direction of Guay-Su, everyone thought silently. Another two top-notch great divinities were about to rise. They just did not know. Whose clones were these two? That's right. No one would think that these two experts who suddenly appeared broke through on their own. Although there were many great divinities in the primordial world, there were not many. They were all limited. How was it possible that two great divination masters of unknown origins had appeared out of nowhere? It would be strange if they were not the clones of some big shot. However, although everyone guessed that Guay-Su and the mental demon were clones, they could not guess who they were. Some people thought that it was Feng Zichen because he had helped the two of them break the seal. However, some people thought that it was not him because if the two demonic cultivators were really his clones, then his performance was too obvious. Some people thought that it was the North Star Emperor because the moment he died, the two demonic cultivators appeared. It was too much of a coincidence. Some people thought that the two demonic cultivators were Di, Jun, and Tai. They had returned and were planning something. In short, there were all kinds of guesses. What was fake was real, and what was real was fake. Who would be able to see through the truth and falsehood within it? From then on, There were two more races in the primordial world, the immortal beast race and the demonic beast race. Don't you think it's funny? The immortal beast race was called immortal beast, but it was created by the demon ancestor of the heavenly fiend path. The demonic beast race was called demonic beast, but it was created by the Tao ancestor of the heavenly immortal path. It was really shocking. Moreover, through this phenomenon, one could see the intensity of the battle between the upper echelons of the primordial world. They were all unscrupulous, wasn't it intense? Sigh. Because the immortal beast was created by the demon ancestor, and the demonic beast was created by the Tao ancestor. Therefore, a strange scene appeared in the primordial world. The race called Immortal Beast was helping the demons of the heavenly fiend path to attack the immortals. The race called Demonic Beast was helping the immortals of the heavenly immortal path to attack the demons. It was really chaotic. Perhaps as time passed, the names of the two races would be swapped. Immortal beasts were no longer called immortal beasts, but demonic beasts. Demonic beasts were no longer called demonic beasts, but immortal beasts. The race created by the innate turbid chi became immortal beasts, and the race created by the innate clear chi became demonic beasts. This scene, it was fun just thinking about it. After the matter between the heavenly fiend path and the heavenly immortal path came to an end, they turned their attention to the western sacred land, Mount Meru. At this moment, if an outsider came here, they would discover that most of the disciples had been killed by the demonic path. It could almost be said that the Western sect had been destroyed. Many talented disciples had appeared in the inner circle, and it became lively once again. In fact, it was almost as lively as before the demonic tribulation. Obviously, when no one was paying attention, the Western sect had undergone an unknown change, and there were signs of prosperity. However, others did not know what had happened to the Western sect, but the mental demon knew. The mental demon was a demon born to destroy the Western sect. He was naturally very concerned about the Western sect, who knew how many spies he had planted in the huge Western sect. Even if the two saints, Ju and Ti, cleaned up batch after batch, they could not kill all of them. The mental demon was born in the heart and was best at manipulating people's hearts. Unless one had cultivated a supreme Tao heart or a cultivation level much higher than him, it would be difficult for one to escape the corrosion of the mental demon and become his puppet. Moreover, the spread of the mental demon did not rely on magic arts, but on emotions. The infection of emotions was the most fatal. Be it touched, excited, or so on, they could all become mediums for the mental demon to corrode others. Therefore, as long as the mental demon completely corroded a disciple of the Western sect, he could spread it throughout the entire Western sect through this disciple and pull more disciples of the Western sect into his control. It was like a plague. Chapter 702. The same idea, different methods, resulted in two completely opposite results. As for which method was better or worse, it was really up to everyone to decide. However, the conflict between the heavenly fiend sect and the Western sect was inevitable. There were only so many ferocious beasts in the primordial world. Their numbers could not be compared to the number of living beings. Therefore, every time the Western sect converted a ferocious beast, the heavenly fiend sect would have to subdue one less ferocious beast, and vice versa. Not to mention the hatred between the two sides, it was inevitable that there would be a conflict between the two sides in order to snatch the source of life. Tisk, TSK, TSK. This is not going to be easy. After knowing the Western sect's goal, the mental demon could not help but feel a toothache. If they really wanted to snatch the ferocious beasts from the Western sect, the heavenly fiend sect would definitely not be a match for them. There was no other reason except that Ju and Ti and his senior brothers were saints. On the other hand, the mental demon and the ultimate void had just touched the threshold of great mystical abilities. The strength of the two sides could not be compared at all. They could not be measured by the Tao. Therefore, it was fine if they did not fight. The ultimate void and the mental demon were definitely no match for them. However, the mental demon was extremely unwilling to give up just like that and let the Western sect convert the ferocious beasts to develop and strengthen. Therefore, he thought for a while and came up with an extremely sinister idea. He wanted to flip the table and release the news that the Western sect was secretly enlightening the ferocious beasts. He wanted the great mystical abilities of the Pangu divine system to cause trouble for the Western sect. If he really wanted to move, the great mystical abilities of the Pangu divine system would naturally not have any advantage when the three pure ones could not attack. Moreover, the heavenly Tao was still on the side of the Western sect. Not only could converting the ferocious beasts reduce the harm they caused to the primordial world, but it could also strengthen the origin of the primordial world. It was a great merit. Since that was the case, how could the heavenly Tao not support it? With the support of the heavenly Tao, it would naturally be difficult for the great mystical abilities of the Pangu divine system to deal with the Western sect. However, suppressing the Western sect did not necessarily mean that they had to find trouble with Xuan-Ti and Xuan-Ti. They could think from another perspective. For example, slaughtering the ferocious beasts. Any ferocious beast that had not been enlightened by the Western sect was a scourge of the primordial world. Not only would it not be wrong to kill them, but it would also be meritorious. This was why the great divines of the Pangu divine branch could destroy the Western sect's plan by slaughtering ferocious beasts. Aren't you going to convert the beast? All right, before that, I will kill all the ferocious beasts in the primordial world. Let's see how you're going to convert me now. It had to be said that Sinkhole's plan was truly vicious. If there were no ferocious beasts in the primordial world, the Western sect's plan to rely on the ferocious beasts to rise could be announced as a failure. As for the heavenly fiend sect, which also wanted to rely on ferocious beasts to prosper, they would be affected but not as much as imagined. This was because, as one of the burial grounds of the chaos demon gods, the ultimate would definitely be filled with ferocious beasts. Every once in a while, a new connate ferocious beast would be born in the ultimate. Therefore, the mental demon was not worried at all. After the connate ferocious beasts in the primordial world were killed by the great divines of the Pangu divine branch, the heavenly fiend sect would not be able to find connate ferocious beasts to nurture an army of ferocious beasts. The ultimate was a breeding ground for connate ferocious beasts. Moreover, the mental demon would not think that anyone would come to a place like the ultimate to kill connate ferocious beasts. Wouldn't that be crazy? How dare they come to such a dangerous place like the ultimate? Did they want to become nutrients for the growth of the primordial world? Just as the myriad races were recuperating, a sudden piece of news broke the long-lost peace of the primordial world. The Western sect was secretly nurturing connate ferocious beasts. Once this news spread, the entire primordial world was in an uproar. Almost all the great divines of the Pangu divine branch were alarmed. Even the three pure ones who were reflecting on their mistakes were alarmed by this matter. In fact, even the Lady of Earth, who was far away in the netherworld, paid attention to this matter for the first time. In an instant, the Western sect became the most popular person in the primordial world and was paid attention to by many important figures. Good fellow, being targeted by so many supreme experts at the same time, not to mention that Xuan-Ti did not hide it at all. Even if they tried their best to hide it, it would probably be useless. Therefore, very quickly, the matter of the Western sect secretly nurturing connate ferocious beasts was exposed to everyone. There was almost no time for Xuan-Ti to react. After confirming the authenticity of this matter, someone directly attacked. Rumble, a huge hand that covered the sky, broke through the air and pressed down on Mount Meru. From the looks of it, not only did it want to kill the connate ferocious beasts that had been enlightened inside, but it also wanted to destroy Mount Meru. When Saint Juan-Ti saw this, he directly stood up to block it. He held the 7 treasures' wonderful hand and collided with the huge hand that covered the sky. In the end, Saint Juan-Ti flew back at a faster speed than when he came. He shattered layers of void and was directly embedded in the depths of the void. The huge hand that covered the sky only paused for a moment. Its power weakened slightly, but it still pressed down on Mount Meru without reducing its momentum. At that moment, Saint Jain could not be bothered to check on Saint Juan-Ti's situation. He hurriedly raised the 12th grade Merit Golden Lotus and released endless light. He blocked the huge hand that covered the sky and protected Mount Meru. Fellow Taoist Hutu, why are you doing this? It's the will of the heavens to enlighten the ferocious beasts. Poor Wei and Junior Brother are also following the heavens. Your attack today has already gone against the will of the heavens. If you stop now, it's not too late to turn back. If you continue to be stubborn, I'm afraid the heavenly punishment will descend immediately. After blocking the huge hand that covered the sky, Saint Jain said with a bitter expression, "It was the Lady of Earth." From Saint Jain's words, he could tell that the person who had attacked just now was the Lady of Earth. Speaking of which, as the legitimate descendant of the Pango, the Lady of Earth and the Khanate ferocious beasts could be said to be natural enemies. It was almost impossible for them to coexist. Therefore, after hearing the news that the 2 of them had secretly nurtured the Khanate ferocious beasts, the anger in her heart could be imagined. As a result, the Lady of Earth, who was famous for her mercy in the primordial world, could not suppress the killing intent in her heart at that moment. She directly attacked, ruthlessly. Killing the Khanate ferocious beasts was not enough to vent her anger. She also wanted to destroy Mount Meru and destroy the Western sect. She was angry. Of course, she used her full strength. Saint Juan-Ti's cultivation level was far inferior to hers. Naturally, he could not block that attack. It was normal for him to be sent flying. Whoosh! While Saint Jain was talking, Saint Juan-Ti flew out from the depths of the void and stood side by side with Saint Jain. He faced the Lady of Earth forcefully, 2 against 1. In this wave, their chances of winning were very high. However, at that moment, boundless phenomena suddenly appeared in the world. Flowers fell from the sky. Golden lotuses surged from the ground. Auspicious beasts opened the way, and immortal birds led the way. Then, a green wand carrying a beauty in a palace dress slowly descended. It was Goddess Niwa. Due to the fact that she did not have a good relationship with the Lady of Earth, Goddess Niwa did not stand with her. Instead, she stood on the other side of the void and formed an angle with the Lady of Earth. They faced Juan-Ti together. The atmosphere immediately became tense. In order to force the other party back, both sides were frantically increasing their auras to obtain the initiative. The powerful aura spread out, and the world became oppressive. Just as a world-destroying battle was about to erupt, the heavenly Tao suddenly descended. Rumble. Accompanied by loud thunder, boundless tribulation clouds gathered and blocked the sunlight, causing the entire Western sect to fall into darkness. Crackle. In the tribulation clouds, lightning snakes danced wildly. They flickered and interweaved with a dense aura of destruction. It was the heavenly punishment. The heavenly punishment had descended. Clearly, in order to prevent the situation from worsening, the heavenly Tao had directly used the heavenly punishment. If both sides dared to make a move, the heavenly punishment would definitely strike mercilessly. He wouldn't hesitate just because he was a saint. Fellow Taoists, please leave. You can't stop the poor Wei and the Lady of Earth. Seeing the heavenly Tao descend, Juan-Ti and the Lady of Earth immediately gained confidence and shouted at Niwa and the Lady of Earth. Without a doubt, the heavenly Tao was on their side. However, when one's strength reached the level of Niwa and the Lady of Earth, although they were afraid of the heavenly Tao, It was impossible for them to listen to the heavenly Tao. The Lady of Earth was an earth saint. When Nuwa attained the Tao, she borrowed the power of a portion of the human Tao. Therefore, they had the confidence to resist the heavenly Tao. It was just that there was no need to use that method unless they had no other choice. In front of Zhuan Ti and the Lady of Earth, Nuwa and the Lady of Earth did not reply. Instead, they took a step forward to express their attitude. They would not retreat just like that. At this moment, it was Zhuan Ti and the Lady of Earth's turn to be dumbfounded. If they really wanted to fight, the two of them were no match for each other at all. Not to mention anything else. Just the fact that the two of them each had a connate cardinal treasure was enough to widen the gap between them and themselves. Rumble. Nuwa and the Lady of Earth's attitude seemed to have angered the heavenly Tao. The tribulation clouds became thicker, and there was even lightning brewing in them, as if they would strike down at any time. How could this be? On Ziwei Star, Feng Zichen, who was observing the situation here, suddenly noticed a strange phenomenon. With the anger of the heavenly Tao, the aura that belonged to Tao ancestor Hongjun in the heavenly Tao was rapidly disappearing. TSK, it seems that Tao ancestor Hongjun's control of the heavenly Tao is not as deep as I thought. Seeing this scene, Feng Zichen seemed to understand something. Tao ancestor Hongjun's control of the heavenly Tao was not firm. Now, with the anger of the heavenly Tao, it directly broke free from Tao ancestor Hongjun's influence and returned to its previous indifferent appearance. Under normal circumstances, Tao ancestor Hongjun could still control the heavenly Tao a little by relying on his relationship with Tao integration. However, once the heavenly Tao fell into a state of rage, Tao ancestor Hongjun would no longer be Tao ancestor Hongjun, but the heavenly Tao. It made sense. After all, the way of heaven in the untainted land was the most powerful existence under the great Tao. Even the chaos demon god at his peak was no match for it. It would be strange if it was so easily controlled by Tao ancestor Hongjun. Tao ancestor Hongjun still had a long way to go before he could control the way of the heavens. Perhaps when Feng Zichen broke through to the peerless golden immortal realm, he would not be able to completely control the way of the heavens. However, from this phenomenon, Feng Zichen roughly knew how to deal with Tao ancestor Hongjun. In the future, Tao ancestor Hongjun would use the power of the heavenly Tao to side with him. Feng Zichen only needed to think of a way to anger the heavenly Tao, and everything would be back to normal. He did not expect that there would be a pleasant surprise just by watching a show. Not bad, really not bad. Due to the scruples of the primeval world, Zhuan Ti, Nuwa, and Huta did not choose to take action, although they were facing each other. For existences of their realm, it was fine if they did not take action, but once they did, it would destroy the world. The heavenly Tao would never allow this to happen. For example, not long ago, Feng Zichen almost fought with the three pure ones. The heavenly Tao hurriedly came and confined both parties. Now, looking at the two parties who were facing each other, the heavenly Tao had the same thought. Then, an invisible force suddenly descended and brought the two of them back to their respective dojos and sealed them up. In the face of this force, even the powerful Huta Nuwa and the others could not resist. They could only passively endure all of this and be sealed in the dojo. Their fate was the same as Feng Zichen and the three pure ones. They were confined, 1 yuan hui, 129,600 years. However, although Zhuan Ti was confined and could not take half a step out of Mount Meru, the ferocious beast that they had enlightened was also on Mount Meru. Everyone could not work together to kill their way up Mount Meru, right? Wouldn't that be sending their heads to Zhuan Ti? One had to know that they could not step out of Mount Meru, not that they could not attack on Mount Meru. They had already barged into their lair and wanted to kill their disciples. How could they expect them not to resist? Wasn't that causing trouble? How could there be such a logic in the world? Wasn't this forcing them to kill? Therefore, these ferocious beasts could not be killed. From this perspective, the heavenly Tao was still on the side of the Western sect. There was nothing they could do. After all, the one who owed the money was the boss. Based on the current situation of the Western sect, if the heavenly Tao did not give them any support, they would probably never be able to repay their loan. In order to prevent bad debts from appearing, the heavenly Tao still had to help appropriately. In fact, in a sense, Zhuan-Ti and Zhuan-Ti were indeed quite powerful. After all, not everyone had the ability to borrow so much merit from the heavenly Tao. It could only be said that the two of them were quite good at painting a big picture. They had scared the heavenly Tao. They could not attack the ferocious beasts on Mount Meru. Everyone hesitated for a moment, not knowing how to deal with the Western sect. However, at that moment, a shocking murderous aura suddenly rose between heaven and earth, shaking the entire universe. Everyone was curious. When they took a look, they realized that the murderous aura originated from the human race. They did not know what had happened to the human race. He had actually mobilized an army to attack the ferocious beasts. It was really interesting. Yes, wait, attacking the ferocious beasts in a daze. Everyone seemed to understand the intentions of the human race and how to deal with the Western sect. Good fellow, the human race is trying to kill us. P.S. 2,910 have been subscribed. There are 90 left. Please subscribe. Please get monthly votes. I'm begging everyone. Chapter 703. As long as he killed all the ferocious beasts in the primordial world, the Western sect's plan to enlighten the ferocious beasts would collapse. This was to solve the problem from the root and cut off all possibilities. Good idea. With a thought, these powerful beings also began to move. Unlike humans, they were powerful and disdained to attack those weak, connate, ferocious beasts. Therefore, their targets were very clear. They were the connate ferocious beasts whose realms were above Daluo Jinxian. Speaking of which, Xiantian ominous beasts could be considered walking Xiantian spirit treasures when they reached the level of Daluo Jinxian. If he could refine the corpse and get rid of the fiendish qi in it, he would be able to obtain a powerful connate spiritual treasure. However, it was not difficult for a great medium to kill an innate ferocious beast, but it was difficult to get rid of the innate ferocious qi in its body. Even though they were called walking primordial spirit treasures, the primordial ferocious beasts could still live well in the untainted land. Wasn't it because the great mediums couldn't get rid of the primordial evil qi in their bodies? Did they really think that the great practitioners were easy to get along with? If they had a way to get rid of the innate evil aura in the innate ferocious beasts, the greedy almighty masters would have long exterminated them in order to refine innate spirit treasures. How could they have kept them alive until now? However, being unable to get rid of the innate evil qi was a thing of the past. Now, these great beings had found a solution. Isn't the Western sect able to enlighten connate ferocious beasts? Since they could enlighten the primordial ferocious beasts, the two saints, Jane and Zhuan-Ti, must have the magic power to dispel the primordial ferocious beasts. Otherwise, they could not enlighten the primordial ferocious beasts. Knowing this, the next step was much simpler. It was definitely impossible to directly ask the two saints, Zhuan-Ti and Zhuan-Ti. The two of them would not tell them. Therefore, they needed to use some special methods at this time. For example, he could capture a few enlightened Xiantian ferocious beasts. No matter what kind of divine ability it was, as long as it had been used, there would definitely be traces left behind. Since the connate beasts had been enlightened by the two saints of the West, there must be traces of such an art in their bodies. These great masters might not be able to create an enlightenment divine art out of thin air, but it was still possible for them to deduce it based on the traces left behind. At the very least, there was still the three pure ones. After the great mediums had made up their minds, the pre-celestial ferocious beasts in the untainted land were doomed. In just a few thousand years, the ferocious beasts that could be seen everywhere in the past were almost extinct in the untainted world. This was especially true for Daluo Jinxian, as well as the Xiantian ferocious beasts above him. Apart from the ultimate and the nether realm, none of the other places were spared, no matter how deeply they hid. Even if they hid in the deep sea abyss or the swamp of death, they would still be found and killed by the great masters. The corpses of these Khanate realm ferocious beasts were superb materials for refining Khanate spirit treasures. So who wouldn't be moved? After all, no one would feel that there were too many Khanate spiritual treasures. Damn it! On Mount Meru, when Zhuan Ti and Zhuan Ti saw this scene, they were really furious and their eyes were about to pop out. Those Khanate ferocious beasts were the hope of the Western sect's rise. How could they not feel heartache when they were brutally killed? Not angry? But unfortunately, it was useless no matter how pained or angry they were, because they could not take half a step out of Mount Meru. They could only watch helplessly as the tragedy unfolded. Junior brother, don't be too angry. The Khanate realm ferocious beasts are formed from the resentment of the Chaos Fiend God. As long as the resentment of the Chaos Fiend God doesn't disappear, the Khanate realm ferocious beasts will never be extinct. So, even if they kill all the Khanate realm ferocious beasts now, so what? After a while, new Khanate realm ferocious beasts will be born. It won't ruin our plan. After a while, Saint Jiayin suddenly calmed down and said to Saint Zhuan Ti, who was beside him with an angry expression, "Senior brother, I understand. I'm just angry at their attitude. They know that the survival of the Khanate realm ferocious beasts is related to whether the Western sect can prosper, but they still attacked without any scruples. They obviously don't take the two of us seriously. This is really outrageous." At this moment, Saint Zhuan Ti said angrily. He felt that his dignity as a saint had been offended. Under such circumstances, if the two of them were the three pure ones, would those great masters dare to attack? They were clearly bullying the weak and fearing the strong. Why should the two of them be inferior to the three pure ones, even though they were both saints? Zhuan Ti was not convinced. Just wait. In the future, you will have to pay the price for what happened today. Looking at the people who were dividing the fruits of victory, Saint Zhuan Ti thought to himself. The seed of hatred had been planted in his heart, waiting to take root and germinate. The last time the person who Saint Zhuan Ti was so concerned about was called Dijun. In the end, 9 of his 10 sons died, and it became the fuse for the destruction of the heavenly court. In less than 10,000 years, the Khanate realm ferocious beasts were slaughtered, and the entire primordial world was cleared. The matter of killing the Khanate realm ferocious beasts had also come to an end for the time being. As for the birth of new Khanate realm ferocious beasts in the future, the great masters had long had a way to deal with them. The new Khanate realm ferocious beasts were definitely not very strong. If they wanted to get rid of them, there was no need for the great masters to do it themselves. They could just leave it to the disciples of the sect to clean up. It could also serve as a form of training. Just like that, the primordial world fell into peace again, and the myriad races continued to enter the stage of cultivation. Time always passed inadvertently. In the blink of an eye, more than 100,000 years had passed. The time limit of the seal that the heavenly Tao had set on everyone had long passed. Feng Zichen and the others had regained their freedom. However, they did not show up. Instead, they all fell into bitter cultivation, hoping to make further progress and break through to a higher realm. In the past 100,000 years, the postnatal Tao had completely replaced the Khanate Tao. In the vast primordial world, there are almost no cultivators who cultivated the Khanate Tao. The Khanate Tao was really too difficult. More than 100,000 years had passed. In the future, there were countless cultivators who cultivated the Tao of heaven to Daluo Jingxian. Only Shao Kong and Shang Tang could cultivate the Khanate Tao to Daluo Jingxian. The Khanate Tao was so difficult to cultivate. It was no wonder that all living beings had switched to cultivating the postnatal Tao. No one was willing to waste their lives. Shao Kong relied on the merit of building the great Xia dynasty and sat in the position of the human king for a full 10,000 years. With this, he accumulated enough foundation and successfully attained the Daluo Tao fruit 100,000 years ago, achieving the immortal and indestructible Taoist priest's realm. After him, although the great Xia dynasty was not without successors, their talents withered. Not only did they not produce any decent experts, but they also lost their country tens of thousands of years ago. At the end of the Xia dynasty, the king Xiajie was licentious and tyrannical, causing the people to have no way of living. At that time, Shang Tang rose up and led an army to overthrow the rule of the Xia dynasty and establish the Great Shang dynasty. It was the heavenly bird descended and gave birth to the Shang dynasty. The founder of the Shang dynasty, Wu Tang, relied on the merit of establishing the dynasty and stayed in the position of the human emperor for 10,000 years. With this, he polished a supreme Tao foundation and successfully attained the Daluo Tao fruit, becoming the Khanate Taoist priests. The Shang dynasty could be said to be the most powerful dynasty of the human race. It was during the reign of the Shang dynasty that the luck of the human race reached its peak. The monarch of the Shang dynasty was not a king, but an emperor. Every monarch of the Shang dynasty would have the word emperor in front of their name, the emperor of the celestial emperor. Therefore, Shang Tang was also known as Emperor Tang. The Jade Emperor was the ruler of the sky, and the Shang Emperor was the ruler of the earth. The two emperors stood side by side, which was a sign that the luck of the human race had reached its peak. Even the saints did not dare to casually attack the Shang Emperor. That was because the karma involved was simply too great. Even someone as powerful as a saint would not be able to easily withstand it. A Khanate spirit treasure has appeared, and it has something to do with me. One day, Feng Zichen, who was comprehending the Tao, suddenly felt a whim and woke up. After carefully deducing, he realized that a Khanate spirit treasure that was fated with him was born. Interesting. Today, there is actually a Khanate spirit treasure that is fated with me in the primordial world. How surprising! Shaking his head, Feng Zichen stood up and left the boundless starry sky. Following the feeling in his heart, he rushed towards the location of the Khanate spirit treasure. Not to mention Khanate spirit treasures, Feng Zichen did not lack Khanate spirit treasures. The reason why he rushed over was that he was too curious about what kind of Khanate spirit treasure could be related to him. One had to know that ever since he attained the Tao, the Khanate spirit treasures that he had obtained were all snatched from others. As for the situation where he could pick up a Khanate spirit treasure when he went out to travel like before, it had been a long time since it happened. Now that such a situation had suddenly occurred, Feng Zichen also missed it very much. Of course, he had to go and take a look. As for whether this was a conspiracy of some people, it was not that Feng Zichen was boasting, but now there were no more than 5 people in the primordial world who could defeat him, and there was not a single one who had the ability to kill him. Tao ancestor Hong Jun could not, and neither could the Way of Heaven. The huge Dharma Laksana of Pangu, standing in the untainted world, was Feng Zichen's greatest protection in the untainted world. Feng Zichen was not very clear about the strength of the Pangu Laksana formed by the power of the untainted world. However, the Pangu Laksana condensed by the power of the starry sky had the power comparable to the 9th heaven of Hanyuan, not to mention the Laksana of Pangu. At the very least, it had to have the power comparable to that of Wuji Daluo Jingxian to be in line with his identity. In fact, he might even become stronger. In short, the power of the Pangu Laksana could be exaggerated as much as possible. There was absolutely nothing wrong with that. With such a trump card, Zichen was naturally not afraid of any danger in the untainted world. If someone really schemed against him, it was not certain who would suffer losses at that time. In the untainted world by the Luo River, Zichen came here and stopped. The Khanate spirit treasure that was fated with him was in the Luo River. Moreover, it would not be long before it was born. The Luo River. Standing by the Luo River, Zichen's face showed a long-lost look of nostalgia. He was very familiar with the Luo River, not to mention that the heavenly Emperor Fuxi had attained his Tao here and created the Khanate 8 trigrams. Even when Zichen was young, he often played by the Luo River. Back then, Ao Shui was fished out by the human race with the merit golden net here. TSK, 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 I really miss the days back then. Just as Zichen was reminiscing about the past, the Khanate spirit treasure of the Luo River was born. Splash! Amidst the sound of water splashing, a black turtle carrying a mysterious scroll slowly surfaced from the center of the Luo River. In an instant, a resplendent Khanate divine light bloomed, enveloping the mountains and rivers within a radius of hundreds of millions of miles. After that, the sound of the great Tao resounded, reverberating between heaven and earth. Such a shocking phenomenon could be said to have alarmed half of the primordial world. Naturally, it attracted countless gazes. Generally speaking, the appearance of a phenomenon meant that a Khanate spirit treasure was born. Moreover, the larger the scale of the phenomenon, the higher the level of the Khanate spirit treasure that was born. The appearance of this phenomenon had alarmed half of the primordial world. That meant that the Khanate spirit treasure that was about to be born was at least a high-grade one. It was also because the current primordial world was not as good as before. Otherwise, if a phenomenon like today had alarmed half of the primordial world, the worst Khanate spirit treasure that was born would be a supreme grade one. However, even so, it did not stop everyone from rushing towards the source of the phenomenon. A high-grade Khanate spirit treasure was not bad. If it was a cultivator, it would be in existence at the level of a mighty figure. Even a great divine ability expert would be tempted. A high-grade Khanate spirit treasure? Not bad, not bad. Without seeing Zichen do anything, the newly born Khanate spirit treasure automatically fell into his hands. At the same time, the origin of this treasure naturally appeared in his mind. The 9 Palaces, 8 Trigrams diagram was the name of this Khanate spirit treasure. It was a high-grade Khanate spirit treasure that contained 32 Khanate divine restrictions. The 9 Palaces, 8 Trigrams diagram. Looking at the black tortoise that carried out the 9 Palaces, 8 Trigrams diagram, Zichen seemed to know the origin of this treasure. If he remembered correctly, this black tortoise should be the one that presented the book to Fuxi back then. Back then, Fuxi had created the Khanate 8 Trigrams diagram here. Because of this place was inevitably contaminated with some of the Tao runes of the Khanate 8 Trigrams diagram. The He-Tu and the Luo Shu had also appeared here and left behind the Tao runes of the Khanate 9 Palaces Tao. For some reason, these 2 Tao runes of the great Tao had fused together and become a Khanate spirit treasure under the nurturing of the origin of the Luo water. The boundless world was really full of strange things. This item was indeed fated with Zichen. Among the 10 great spirit treasures that formed the chaos array, the Khanate 9 Palaces diagram still had a flaw. Fusing the Khanate 9 Palaces 8 Trigrams diagram could make up for this flaw. It saved me a lot of trouble. Shaking his head and smiling, Zichen put away the Khanate 9 Palaces 8 Trigrams diagram. However, he was not in a hurry to leave. Instead, he looked at the black tortoise. This black tortoise was very extraordinary. P.S. I could have posted an anti-theft stamp to cover up the fact that I updated late. But I feel that this will affect the reading experience of the genuine readers. Therefore, I would rather take leave than post an anti-theft stamp. Seeing that I am so considerate of you, give me some monthly votes. Also, I beg for a subscription. 2,915. 85 more. Chapter 704. At the very least, it had a great relationship with the human race. First, it was the Book of Luo, and then it was the Connate 9 Palaces, 8 trigrams diagram. 2 connate spirit treasures in a row were sent over by this black tortoise. From this, it could be seen that this black tortoise must have something special. Otherwise, how could these 2 opportunities fall on its head? With a slight thought, Feng Ziqin silently used the great yen calculation and began to deduce the origin of this black tortoise. As the divine ability was activated, the karma between heaven and earth gradually became clear in front of Feng Ziqin's eyes. For pillars that supported heaven and earth came into his sight. Those were the pillars of heaven. They stood between heaven and earth and supported the heavens. After that, the pillars of heaven disappeared and were replaced by endless resentment. So it's this. After coming back to his senses, Feng Ziqin said in surprise. He had calculated the origin of the black tortoise. It was indeed shockingly big. In the past, Mount Buzhou collapsed. In order to find a replacement, the Grand Master of Heaven killed a peerless black tortoise in the North Sea and took its 4 limbs to turn into pillars of heaven to support heaven and earth. Since the creation of heaven and earth, the black tortoise had been living in the North Sea. It never caused trouble, nor did it incur hatred with others. It could be said that it was very honest. Originally, it could live to the end of heaven and earth like this. However, it did not expect that a sudden calamity would take its life. It was really a case of sitting at home, and disaster came from the sky. The collapse of Mount Buzhou had nothing to do with the black tortoise. However, at the last moment, the saint actually wanted to use its 4 limbs to replace Mount Buzhou and use it as the pillars of heaven? Don't you think it was wronged? How could the black tortoise not hate its inexplicable death? The black tortoise in front of Feng Ziqin was the reincarnation of the unlucky North Sea black tortoise in the past. It had the merit of supporting the heavens. Don't you think its background is great? If this black tortoise could embark on the path of cultivation, it would definitely be a future great magician. However, logically speaking, shouldn't this black tortoise be taken in by the Grand Master of Heaven? This was what they had agreed upon back then. Before the prime of Tongtian killed the North Sea black tortoise, he had promised to take its reincarnation into his sect and help it attain enlightenment. It was precisely because of this that the North Sea black turtle was willing to stretch out its neck and be cut into pieces by the prime of Tongtian. Otherwise, did they really think that the black tortoise of the North Sea was dead? How could it not know how to fight back when the other party had already come knocking on its door? The strength of the North Sea black tortoise could be seen from the fact that its 4 limbs could turn into pillars that supported the sky. Even if he wasn't a sage, he was still a top-notch existence among the great divines. Even if such an existence could not defeat the sect leader of Tongtian, it would not be easy for the sect leader to kill him. However, the truth was that the prime of Tongtian had killed the black tortoise effortlessly. Of course, this was because they had made a deal beforehand, which made the North Sea black tortoise give up resisting. TSK? However, since they had already made an agreement, why hadn't Tongtian accepted the reincarnation of the North Sea black tortoise into his sect after so many years? Instead, he had allowed it to wander outside. This doesn't make sense. One had to know that a sage's promise was as important as heaven and earth. It was impossible for him to break his promise. Since the prime of Tongtian did not fulfill his promise, there must be a secret that ordinary people did not know. All right, this black tortoise seemed to have been found by A.O. Shui in the beginning. Thinking of this, Feng Zichen's heart skipped a beat as he guessed a possibility. Without hesitation, he activated the purple eye of the heavenly path and looked at the black tortoise. Sure enough, he found the problem. Feng Zichen saw a faint trace of dragon qi on the black tortoise's body. Although it was faint, it was extremely pure. Obviously, it was made by the ancestral dragon. Good heavens! What's this again? Why is the ancestral dragon fighting with the prime of Tongtian all of a sudden? Seeing this, Feng Zichen understood that the ancestral dragon had schemed against the prime of Tongtian. Otherwise, after tens of millions of years, with the prime of Tongtian's strength, he would have been able to find the reincarnation of the North Sea black tortoise. As the ancestor of the Water Clan, it was much easier for the ancestral dragon to find the reincarnation of the North Sea black tortoise than for the prime of Tongtian. He just did not know what kind of enmity there was between the ancestral dragon and the prime of Tongtian that made the ancestral dragon, who had not cared about the affairs of the world for many years, personally plot against the prime of Tongtian. However, whatever enmity there was between them had nothing to do with Feng Zichen. Now, what he needed to do was to take away this black tortoise. As the saying goes, if you don't take what the heavens give you, you will be punished. This black tortoise had appeared in front of Feng Zichen twice. It could be seen that the fate between the two was not shallow. This was the will of the heavens. The will of the heavens asked Feng Zichen to take this black tortoise away. If he did not take this black tortoise away, who knew what would happen in the future? Little fellow, you can be considered to be fated with me. Then let me ask you, are you willing to leave with me? Walking in front of the black tortoise, Feng Zichen asked with a smile. Yes, this little beast is willing. Thank you, Taoist priests, for taking me in. Although the black tortoise did not know the specific origin of Feng Zichen, it still vaguely remembered that the Emperor Fuxi was very respectful to the person in front of it. A person who even the emperor had to respect must have a very powerful background. It was an honor to be taken in by such a person. How could it refuse? Of course, it hurriedly nodded, afraid that the other party would change his mind if it nodded too slowly. Very well, then let's leave. Nodding, Feng Zichen waved his sleeve and was about to leave with the black tortoise. But at this moment, several rainbow lights suddenly flew over from afar and turned into human figures, landing in front of Feng Zichen. Hand over the primordial spirit treasure. Otherwise, don't even think about leaving. As soon as those people appeared, they surrounded Feng Zichen and shouted loudly. TSK! Killing people to steal the treasure? Blocking the road to rob? When I was weak back then, I didn't encounter such a thing. I didn't expect that I would encounter such a situation after I had achieved Tao. It's really quite rare. Surrounded by the crowd, Feng Zichen did not feel much anger in his heart. More than that, he felt that it was interesting. It was the first time that he was blocked and robbed. It was quite a refreshing feeling. Besides, as a transmigrator, was it appropriate to not be blocked and robbed? Was it worthy of his profession? If word got out, what would it look like? Wouldn't it be a disgrace to transmigrators? The people surrounding Feng Zichen were the most powerful cultivators who were alarmed by the phenomenon of the Khanate 9 Palace's 8 trigrams diagram. They were all in the realm of Daluo Jinxian. Otherwise, they would not have rushed over so quickly. To be honest, this kind of cultivation was considered very rare in this era. The 12 golden immortals of the Chan sect were only in the realm of Daluo Jinxian. However, these itinerant cultivators were at the same level. It was not known whether these itinerant cultivators were too outstanding or the 12 golden immortals of the Chan sect were too useless. Sigh. After sighing for a while, the novelty in Feng Zichen's heart passed. Immediately, he ignored the crowd and walked away. The existence of ants was not worthy of his attention. However, he did not care about ants, but those ants cared about him. No, to be precise, they cared about the Khanate spirit treasure in his hands. The gap between the Khanate Daluo Taoist priests and the acquired Daluo Jingxian was too big. Not to mention the gap in strength, the gap in temperament was also unbearable to look at. Under such circumstances, if the Khanate Taoist priests were here, they would naturally be able to see that Feng Zichen was not to be trifled with. However, in the eyes of the acquired Daluo Jingxian, there was only the newly born Khanate spirit treasure in the eyes of the acquired Daluo Jingxian, and he completely ignored Feng Zichen. This was what it meant to be blinded by greed. Greed had blinded their rationality, and they had even lost their basic judgment. It was not without a price to be an expert of the acquired Tao. The cultivation time was too short, and they only cared about polishing their dermic powers. How could they have the time to polish their temperament? It was normal to be controlled by power if one's temperament was not enough. The acquired Tao had just been born, and it was far from perfect as the innate Tao. There were still many things to be perfected. It seemed that the three pure ones would be busy in the future. Just patching it was enough for them. Bastard! If you don't hand over the Khanate spirit treasure, don't even think about leaving alive. Perhaps provoked by Feng Zichen's arrogant attitude, everyone was furious. They cursed at him loudly as they took out their dermic treasures and attacked him. Rumble. However, before their attacks fell on Feng Zichen, they saw the Khanate divine thunder striking down from the sky and killing everyone present on the spot. This was not done by Feng Zichen, but by the spontaneous operation of heaven and earth. Who was Feng Zichen? He was the head of the four great gods, the supreme of heaven and earth. All the living beings in the untainted world, including the group of people who had just surrounded him, could be said to be his people. They dared to attack Feng Zichen, which was called offending their superiors. At this time, there was no need for Feng Zichen to attack. Heaven and earth would sense it and kill all these sinners who dared to offend their superiors. It could even be said that with Feng Zichen's identity in the untainted world, no one below the Daluo Taoist priests could attack him. Otherwise, what awaited them would be divine punishment. The dignity of the supreme of heaven and earth would be protected by heaven and earth. After taking away the black tortoise, Feng Zichen was not in a hurry to return to the boundless starry sky. He had not wandered in the untainted world for a long time. Today, he was thinking of traveling after a long period of silence. He planned to travel and relax. Moreover, he had not been to the human race for a long time. Now that he was relaxing, he could take the opportunity to take a look. Now the human race should be under the rule of the Shang dynasty. It was good to take a look and see how different it was from the Great Xia. In this way, Feng Zichen wandered around the untainted world. However, this state did not last long before it was destroyed by an accidental discovery. Just as Feng Zichen was traveling around, he suddenly sensed a trace of Taoist Kundi's aura. This aura was extremely weak, almost undetectable. It was only because Feng Zichen was very familiar with the aura of Saint Kundi that he realized that something was wrong. Otherwise, he would not have discovered it. Since he had discovered the traces of Saint Kundi, Feng Zichen was not in the mood to continue traveling. He immediately gave up his original plan and followed the aura to track down the whereabouts of Saint Kundi. Although he did not know the purpose of Saint Kundi secretly coming to the untainted world, it was not wrong for him to destroy it. Just like that, Feng Zichen followed the aura all the way. It was not until he arrived in front of an ordinary farmhouse's courtyard that the aura stopped abruptly. Curious, Feng Zichen walked closer and saw an ordinary family of three. It was not ordinary. The child in this family should be the reincarnation of a disciple of the Western sect. Yes, the reincarnation of a disciple of the Western sect in ancient times. A proper Tai Jingxian, born as a Khanate life form. What? Is the reincarnation of an ordinary disciple of the Western sect with Saint Kundi secretly coming to the untainted world? Even if he swaggered over and took him away, what's the problem? Something's wrong. There must be something wrong. There must be something wrong. Fong Zichin felt that since Saint Kundi was unwilling to leak the news and sneaked over, it meant that there must be something special about this disciple. With that thought in mind, Fong Zichin activated the purple eye of the heavenly Tao and continued to look at the child. However, the result was the same as before. Apart from being the reincarnation of Tai Jingxian, there was nothing special about that child. That was strange. Since there was nothing special about this child, why did Saint Kundi treat him so cautiously? He could not understand. He really could not understand. With doubts in his heart, Fong Zichin simply transformed into an ordinary human and settled down to observe the child closely. He wanted to see what Saint Kundi was up to. As for why he did not use the divine calculation of Great Yen to deduce, of course, that was because Fong Zichin did not want to alert the enemy. Any heavenly secrets related to the saint could not be deduced. No matter how exquisite the deduction method was, it could not be done. Because when one's strength reached the realm of the saint, even if one muttered their names, they would be sensed by them, let alone deducing the heavenly secrets related to them. They would definitely be sensed by them. Fong Zichin had yet to figure out what Saint Kundi wanted to do. Naturally, he could not alarm him in advance and force him to give up or change his plan. A mortal's life was only 100 years. To Fong Zichin, it was only the blink of an eye. He could afford to wait. Therefore, he waited here. Once Saint Kundi had any plans, he would not be able to escape Fong Zichin's eyes. And this wait lasted for 18 years. 18 years had passed. Back then it was just an ordinary family. Now, it was developed and completed a magnificent transformation from a farmer to a landlord. It could be said to be a reversal of life. Not only did they move to the city to live, but they also owned a big house and became a famous, rich family in the city. And that child who was crying piteously for food back then had now grown into an adult. Yes, ordinary looks and ordinary talent. Other than having rich parents, there was nothing special about him. He was the kind that couldn't be found in a crowd. Oh, that's not right. This child was especially kind. He was a famous, honest person in the surrounding villages. This was not a compliment. P.S. 2,922. There's still 78 left. Please subscribe. Chapter 705. When kindness was associated with honesty, it could only mean one thing. This person might be a little stupid and easy to bully. In fact, this child was not too mediocre. He could be said to be of average talent. However, he was the reincarnation of Tai Jingxian. If he was only of average talent, he would not be able to live up to his identity. He should be the heavenly son of the human clan. However, what happened to this child had nothing to do with Fong Zichin. When he learned the child's name, he had already figured out Kundi's plan. The child's name was Yang Tianyu. It was a very familiar name. Fong Zichin thought carefully and found where he had heard this name in his distant memory. Wasn't this Yang Jian's father? Good heavens! Everything matched up. Saint Kundi was going to attack the heavenly court. After figuring this out, Fong Zichin was not in a hurry to point it out. Instead, he continued to live in seclusion. He planned to give Saint Kundi a surprise. Things were as Fong Zichin expected. Not long after Yang Tianyu grew up, Yaoji, who was in the heavenly court, came to the human world because she was chasing the fugitive from the heavenly court. As soon as Yaoji entered the human world, Saint Kundi's plan was activated. He silently made Yaoji fall into the love tribulation. At that time, Yaoji was still chasing the fugitive from the heavenly court without knowing that she had been set up. Under the secret push of Saint Kundi, the two of them finally met outside the Yang family village, and a big battle broke out. After that, the fugitive from the heavenly court escaped with serious injuries. Yaoji was seriously injured and unconscious. She was rescued by Yang Tianyu, who passed by. The plot began. Under normal circumstances, after the two of them went through a few hardships together, they would fall in love with each other. Then they would get married and live happily for decades. After that, they would be discovered by Hao Yin and be hunted down by the heavenly soldiers. But now it would not be like this, because when the plot began, Feng Zichen also started to take action. He did not stop Saint Juan Ti from attacking, nor did he help Yaoji. He also did not interfere with Yang Tianyu so that they could not meet. Feng Zichen quietly left an incarnation here, then hurried back to the heaven. He wanted to drag Hao Yin over to watch the show. He wanted to know how Hao Yin would react if he knew in advance that Yaoji was plotted against by Saint Juan Ti and fell in love with a mortal. Just the thought of that scene was exciting. Cause trouble, cause trouble. Feng Zichen was doing something big right now. The reason for Yaoji's tragedy was that Hao Yin didn't know about it beforehand. But now, with Feng Zichen's manipulation, Hao Tian knew about this in advance. Would the tragedy repeat itself? How far was the human world from the heavenly court? However, under Feng Zichen's feet, it was only a step away. He took a step and arrived in front of the southern heaven gate. With another step, he entered the southern heaven gate and arrived in front of Hao Tian, who was resting in the Hall of Fragrance. Fellow Taoist Hao Tian, you've been very relaxed recently. Feng Zichen went straight to Hao Yin's side and said directly to him, "Relaxed." Fellow Taoist, don't tease poor Wei. Hao Yin was not surprised by Feng Zichen's arrival. He just shook his head and responded to his teasing with a wry smile. Let's not talk about this. Why do you have time to come to poor Wei's place today? Hao Tian did not want to chat with Feng Zichen, so he went straight to the point and asked, "Of course, I invited you to watch the show. Poor Wei has been very quiet recently, so he traveled to the untainted land. In the process of traveling, he happened to see a big show, so he wanted to invite you to watch it." At this time, Feng Zichen said mysteriously, "Watch the show? What show?" Hearing this, Hao Tian asked curiously. However, at this time, Feng Zichen did not have the time to chat with Hao Yin here. One must know that one day in heaven and one thing on earth could not be delayed. This delay might spoil the plan. Therefore, Feng Zichen did not explain to Hao Yin. Instead, he pulled him and walked to Yang Village in the human world. Don't ask so much. You'll know when you get there. While pulling Hao Yin, Feng Zichen did not forget to say. Just like this, Hao Tian was dragged by Feng Zichen and walked to the human world. How fast were the two of them? One moment, they were still in the Hall of Fragrance, in the heavenly court. The next moment, they were already in Yang Village, outside Yang Tianyu's house. Fellow Taoist, why did you bring poor Wei here? It's just an ordinary farmyard. What's there to see? Being dragged here by Feng Zichen, Hao Tian said with a face full of reluctance. However, he could not continue halfway through his words. It was as if his throat was blocked by something. He opened his mouth for a long time, but did not say a word. That was because, from the corner of his eye, he saw a person who should not have been there in the ordinary farmyard. It was Yaoji, his sister Yaoji. At this moment, the Princess Royal of the Heavenly Court was doing something that did not match her identity. She was helping a mortal wash his clothes. At this time, Feng Zichen, who was beside Hao Yin, could clearly see that at this moment, Hao Tian's expression was very colorful. There was confusion, anger, all kinds of duplicated emotions intertwined on his face, but there was no joy at all. Bastard! The next moment, Hao Tian exploded. He directly reached out to grab Yaoji, trying to suppress her. However, at this time, Feng Zichen suddenly stopped him. When Hao Yin just raised his hand and was about to grab Yaoji, Feng Zichen directly grabbed his arm and interrupted Hao Yin's magic. Fellow Taoist, what do you mean by this? After trying to struggle twice and finding that he could not break free, Hao Qian asked with a face full of anger, "Fellow Taoist, please calm down. Can't you see your sister's situation?" Looking at the furious Hao Qian, Feng Zichen shook his head. While speaking, he secretly used the mind-clearing spell to try to calm his mood. Loyalty was indeed Hao Qian's biggest weakness. Looking at Yaoji at this moment, he even lost his basic judgment and did not notice anything wrong with Yaoji at all. Phew, poor Wei was too impulsive. After being persuaded by Feng Zichen, Hao Qian finally regained his composure. The wisdom of an emperor returned to him. Love tribulation? Who did it? After regaining his composure, Hao Qian looked at Yaoji again and found that something was wrong. In Hao Qian's eyes, a long red line suddenly appeared on Yaoji's body. That was the red line, the line of marriage. However, the red line on Yaoji's body was different from that of others. It was redder, dazzling, and strange, as if blood would drip down at any time. The red line was like blood, which was the symbol of love tribulation. However, Yaoji usually stayed in the heavenly court and seldom communicated with outsiders. How could she be involved in love tribulation with others? It was obvious that she had been set up by others. After silently deducing for a moment and finding that he could not deduce any information, Hao Qian immediately understood that the one who set up his sister Yaoji must be a sage. After all, in the untainted land, only a sage could make him unable to deduce any information. The one who did it must be one of the 7 sages. As for who it was, although Hao Qian did not know, Feng Zichen, who invited him to watch the show, must know. Thinking of this, Hao Qian directly asked Feng Zichen, "Fellow Taoist, please tell poor Wei which sage set up my sister." Judging from his posture, it seemed that as soon as Feng Zichen told him the identity of the person behind the scenes, he would run over and risk his life. "Which sage is it? Don't you have the answer in your heart? Except for him, who else could do such a despicable thing?" Feng Zichen smiled. Feng Zichen did not point it out, but asked in riddles. "It's really him. Kundi, you are a sage in vain. You are really shameless to do such a despicable thing. It's really shameful for poor Wei to be in the same category as him. It's also because poor Wei was young and ignorant back then. She pitted the two of them and did not hesitate to risk the punishment of the Tao ancestor to open the door of the Purple Cloud Palace for them, which led to today's result. I regret it so much." Although Feng Zichen said it vaguely, Hao Qian still guessed the other party's identity at the first moment and could not help but curse angrily. Among the sages, who else could do such a thing except Taoist Kundi? The 3 pure ones would not, and neither would Niwa and Hutu. Saint Jiayin had always been low-key and would not. Then only Saint Kundi was left. In the untainted land, there were few things that Saint Kundi did not dare to do. What was the big bullying the small? He dared to plot against Di Jun, let alone Hao Qian. He had a criminal record. Is he going to deal with poor Wei? Over the years, poor Wei has been living in seclusion and not paying attention to the affairs of the world, which is to avoid them. But I didn't expect that poor Wei has done so much, but they still think that poor Wei is in the way and want to plot against poor Wei. They are really going too far. After coming back to her senses, Hao Qian murmured unconsciously. She seemed to be talking to herself, but also seemed to be asking Feng Zichen. From the moment she learned that Yaoji was plotted against by Kundi, Hao Qian knew that Kundi's target was not Yaoji, but her. Yaoji's cultivation was only at the level of Tai Jinxian. What was there for Kundi to plot against? It was nothing more than using her to plot against her. It was because she understood this that Hao Qian became angrier. Over the years, she had tolerated the sages again and again and did not want to have a conflict with them. But she did not expect that her concession was regarded as weakness by the sages, so that the sages increasingly did not take her seriously and acted more and more unscrupulously. Today, Saint Kundi's actions completely ignited the anger that Haotian had suppressed for many years. As the saying goes, the more ruthless the suppression, the more intense the outburst. At this moment, Haotian really wanted to kill the sages. "Fellow Taoist, please take care of my sister for a while. Poor Wei has something to do and needs to leave." After bowing to Feng Zichen, Haotian was about to leave to go to Mount Shumi and ask Saint Kundi for an explanation. However, Feng Zichen did not intend to let Haotian leave at this time. He felt that it was not enough now. He wanted to add fuel to the fire for Haotian. "Fellow Taoist, please wait. You can go to Mount Shumi at any time, but don't you want to know how Kundi is going to plot against you?" After stopping Haotian, Feng Zichen said with a serious face. Hearing this, Haotian hesitated. She really wanted to know how Kundi was going to plot against her. "How should I know?" After hesitating for a while, Haotian felt that what Feng Zichen said made sense. She could go to Mount Shumi at any time, so she asked. "It's easy." Feng Zichen smiled gently and reached out his hand. He opened his 5 fingers and grabbed at the void. There was suddenly one less female disciple on Mount Shumi. "Fellow Taoist, this is..." Looking at the disciple of the Western sect who suddenly appeared in Feng Zichen's hand, Haotian seemed to have understood something. "Change." Feng Zichen softly said a word and responded to Haotian with practical actions. Without seeing how Feng Zichen attacked, the female disciple of the Western sect in his hand suddenly disappeared. At the same time, Yaoji, who was in a coma, suddenly appeared beside Haotian. In the blink of an eye, Feng Zichen replaced Yaoji with the female disciple of the Western sect in his hand. "Fellow Taoist, please work with me to shield the secrets of heaven so that Saint Xuan Ti won't notice it in advance." After doing all this, Feng Zichen said to Haotian with a smile, "That's how it should be." At this moment, Haotian also understood Feng Zichen's plan and agreed. Then, the two of them worked together to change the secrets of heaven here so that Saint Xuan Ti would not notice anything unusual. Although Saint Xuan Ti knew that the Western sect had lost a disciple, he did not take it to heart. That was because during this period of time, the Western sect had often lost disciples, and Saint Xuan Ti was already used to it. The ones who took action were naturally the great mediums of the primordial world. In order to find a way to get rid of the murderous aura in the bodies of the ferocious beasts, they had attacked many disciples of the Western sect over the years. They forced Xuan Ti and Saint Xuan Ti to expose the method of getting rid of the ferocious beasts. Feng Zichen and Haotian's methods were so amazing that after turning the female disciple of the Western sect into Yaoji, she did not realize that she was a fake. Even the fake Yaoji thought that she was real, let alone Yang Tianyu, who was just a mortal. He did not notice anything unusual at all. In this way, the two of them experienced some things together and gradually got together. They even gave birth to 3 children. Seeing this, Haotian's face turned green. If it were not for Feng Zichen holding him back, the two of them would have been killed by him. Don't worry. This is just the beginning. Let's continue watching. In the void, Feng Zichen held down Haotian, who was about to leave, and said with a smile. At this moment, someone spread the news of Fairy Yaoji marrying a mortal and giving birth to a child in the lower realm to the heavenly court. For a moment, the gods were in an uproar. Marrying a mortal. This was a violation of the heavenly law. Then, without waiting for Haotian's order, the maker of the heavenly law, the South Pole Longevity Emperor, ordered Martial Canopy to lead 10,000 heavenly soldiers and generals to the lower realm to capture Fairy Yaoji to protect the dignity of the heavenly court. The heavenly law was the most strict, and it was not allowed to be tarnished. Just when Martial Canopy was gathering the army, Shao-Chi, the youngest daughter of the Jade Emperor, hurriedly rushed over to report the news after receiving the news. P.S. Please subscribe. There are still 74 left. You're tuning in to the Thunder Spear YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.